All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Howell Township Mayor and Council's April 24th regular meeting. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the opening statement?
Absolutely. Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this regular meeting of the Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner. By the posting of a copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on January 1, 2007. By the faxing of a copy of said notice to the Asbury Park Press, Tri-Town News, Star Ledger for publication on January 1, 2007. By the filing of a copy of said form of notice in the Township Clerk's office on January 1, 2007. The public will be allowed to attend and will be allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of Public Law 1975, Chapter 127. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with 3 emergency exits for your safety. The locations are as follows. Upon exiting the meeting room to the rear, there are to immediate left and immediate right, and at the front of the meeting room at the left of the dais. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Roll call, Mrs. Dalton?
Here.
Mr. Howell?
Here.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Does not appear to be here at this time.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mayor DeBella?
Here. Okay, we're going to have our Pledge of Allegiance when we return out front. Mr. Chernetsky, do we have reason to go into executive session, sir?
Yes, Mayor. Litigation, attorney-client privilege, and land acquisition.
All right, would you please read the appropriate statement, Ms. Warren?
Whereas Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 13 of the New Jersey Revised Statutes require that the public shall not be excluded from any meeting of a public body unless a resolution authorizing such exclusion is adopted at a public meeting, whereas the Township Council of the Township of Howell has determined that such a closed meeting is required to discuss certain matters which are exempted from consideration with the public in attendance under New Jersey Revised Statute 10:4-12. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Howell that the public shall be excluded from the next portion of this meeting, and the Township Council will reconvene in public session thereafter. Be it further resolved that minutes will be kept of the meeting in closed session, and the time and the circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public cannot be determined at this time.
I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, we will convene in approximately, how much time do we need, Mr. Chernetsky?
We'll need approximately a half hour.
Okay, so we'll convene in about 30 minutes. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call this meeting to order. We've already begun our meeting with the appropriate opening statement. I'd ask that everyone please rise for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd ask that everyone just please remain standing for a moment. We typically do a moment of silent observation in thought of the troops that defend this country all over the world, and I'll ask that we continue to do that tonight. In addition, last week, the tragedy that took place at Virginia certainly has concerned everyone that has a child that goes to school anywhere, and it really questions the safety of all of our young people. Our hearts go out to the families of those that were impacted by that horrible national disaster and the tragedy that it was. And we certainly pray in our own private way that some of these incredibly insane things that we are experiencing will come to an end. And on a very local, very personal note, as I think everyone in the community knows, former Councilman Wayne Lucy passed very suddenly last week. Very tragic. A very young man full of life and full of energy. In the time he served on this municipal governing body, he did so with courage and with dignity. And his family remains in our thoughts and prayers. He's a dear personal friend of mine on a very personal note, and I will certainly miss him terribly. And because of the service he made to this community, not just as a council person, but as an activist with the Little League and the many activities that he and his family had taken in the community, I would ask that we all keep Mr. Lucy and his wife and his sons and daughter in our prayers. And I'd ask for please a moment of silent observation for all of that. Thank you. Okay. We do not have apparently any minutes this evening to dispense with, so we'll start with reports of officials. Ms. Dalton, like the pleasure to begin?
Yes, very briefly, I just wanted to update everyone slightly on a couple of things. I've been pretty vocal about health issues with regard to obesity and trying to bring the healthcare component to Howell Day, and I know that now Howell Day is definitely set for Saturday, September 29th? That's correct. Is my phone not on? Okay, I wasn't sure because the last time I had spoken about it, we weren't sure on what the date. Okay. And so I am working with the Recreation Department on what will hopefully be a very nice program involving a number of the medical centers in the community and some other programming. As everyone should be aware, Thursday, May 24th is Howell Day at the Lakewood Blue Claws, and there are a number of needy families in need of tickets for that. So business members of the community are being asked to help support that by donating. Anyone is invited to go, and tickets are $10. You get a hat and a food voucher, and I promised the rec department that I would market that program today. So everyone should come out on May 24th for that Howell Day at the Lakewood Blue Claws. It's going to be a great time. I think the mayor is throwing out the ball at 6:35 p.m. sharp, and hopefully the weather will be great. And that's all I have to report tonight.
Thank you, Councilman Dalton. Mr. Howell, Councilman Howell.
Hopefully the mayor won't wear a Yankees jacket at the Blue Claws game this year. Mayor, Saturday I had the honor and the privilege of being present at a Eagle Scout ceremony at the Methodist Church in Farmingdale. It was the first one that I had the privilege to attend, and I see some of the fellows from the trooper here this evening as well. It was one of the better things that we get to do on this council. You know, aside from, I'll leave the Howell North Little League and stuff to you guys, but that'll be it for me this evening.
Sure. Mrs. Showmaker, anything under reports?
Report tonight, Mayor.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Walsh, anything under reports?
Yeah, hopefully the mayor will be wearing a Yankee jacket at the Blue Claws game.
I'm starting to like sitting in between you guys.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
You feel like the bubble in the level, don't you?
On a personal note for me, it is Autism Awareness Month, and having an autistic child, a lot of things going on in the community. And on May 19th at Howell Bowling Lanes, there'll be a Bowling for Autism. All the proceeds go back to the Howell Township School to help the special needs children in our school. And there will be a golf outing June 11th at Eagle Oaks Country Club over here in Farmingdale. And all the money goes to 3 organizations. One's in Howell, one's in Staten Island, and one's in the state of New Jersey. They're all autistic organizations. Anybody who'd like more information on that, please feel free to contact me. I'm pretty easy to find. If you don't see my picture somewhere, somebody know where to find me. I did stop by last week. An Eagle Scout was working on the old meeting house across the street. Kelsey Russell did a fine job with the signs, some planting. Had a good conversation with him. Some other scouts were out there helping him. It's a good thing seeing some of the youth in our community giving back, caring about the township, and trying to improve its beauty. I enjoyed going over there for a little while. So my hat's off to Kelsey Russell. It was nice meeting the young man and everybody that participated with him. And as we all know in the community, the school budget got voted down last week. And the mayor and myself and the manager, Mr. Chernetsky, I'm still working on pronouncing his name. I'm doing the best I can. Frank's here in case I fail, he'll help me. We've had a preliminary meeting with members of the Board of Education. More will be discussed in the next week or two, and we will come up with some final determinations and let them out in the public somewhere before May 21st. So it's, right now, it's a fact-finding process. Can't really release much other information about it. People have asked. We'll see how it goes, and then it'll all be discussed publicly up here. Anybody from the community would like to ask us questions at that time, we'll be glad to answer. But for now, really not much could say about it. God bless.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just have a couple of updates and comments, also some questions. Mr. Chernetsky, we had talked about a dedication of the police and court complex in honor of former Chief and former Mayor Harvey Morrell. Are there any details, or where are we with respect to working on that?
Mayor, if you'd allow me to report back to you. I had discussions with the police department about doing that. Probably not a surprise to you, but they're supportive of doing this as well. We're trying to identify the appropriate changes and signage, and I know it's something council wanted to see done, I think, for Howell Day, if I recall. And that's what we're aiming towards.
Was that one?
Mayor, I'm not sure if we wanted to do it at Howell Day, or I believe it might have been that, but I believe the anniversary of the police department is August 27th is the anniversary of the founding of the police department. I don't know if that might be a more appropriate date.
Sure. Would you look into that, Mr. Chernetsky?
Sure, that's
I
what
agree
we'll
with
work-
Hal Day.
You're a Yankee fan.
A couple other things, Mr. Chernetsky. We voted on having a resolution in support of Senator Singer's bill requiring that all COA mediation be subjected to a public hearing. Do we have a draft of that?
I believe it's on the agenda.
So it is on for tonight. Okay, I hadn't gone through everything yet. Something else that I wanted to mention before I read a proclamation. It was brought to my attention, a resident had emailed me, and then several emailed me, regarding concerns about something that is certainly not that topical right now, but it disturbed me nonetheless. The holiday event that the municipality holds every year out here on the front lawn. And apparently that we have historically referred to the Christmas tree lighting as a holiday tree. And I sort of took exception with that because I kind of felt we've taken political correctness just to a totally insane level. And I guess from an analogous perspective, we certainly don't call the menorah, holiday candles. And I'm beginning to feel that we are being boxed in or cornered into having to be so politically correct that we lose the right to celebrate those things that independently that are important to us. And to call the Christmas tree a holiday tree it's just silly. It's a Christmas tree. And I'm not suggesting that this municipality or any municipality enforce that someone has to celebrate something. That's absolutely wrong. But if we're giving fair and appropriate representation to whatever the holidays are that somebody celebrates at that time of the year, in which I think we have, then I can't understand why we can't call it a Christmas tree lighting. And so, Mr. Bongiovanni or whomever, I'm not sure if you guys can, or the administrative team, or if the council has anything to say about it, but I'd like to go on record saying that this year I think we should call it, some holiday celebration, and there's a menorah and there's a Christmas tree, and whatever else is celebrated at that time of the year, we should mention that too.
I think what you mean, Mr. Mayor, is that the object itself, the tree, had like a label on it that said holiday tree, as opposed to...
It was actually a flyer. The flyer that was circulated, apparently by the municipality, someone scanned it and emailed it to me, and it was not an offensive flyer. And this is not a criticism of the Recreation Department, but it talked about there'd be a holiday tree lighting. And I just said to myself, I can't understand, why can't we call it a Christmas tree? And it just really, when I sat and thought about it, I said, whether I'm a Christian or not, and I am, I wouldn't expect us to call the menorah or some other object some watered-down vanilla name that didn't characterize what it was. It's a Christmas tree.
I disagree with you.
There's no denying it's a Christmas tree. So
I agree with you, man.
I just don't know can we call it a Christmas tree, or is there some law that says we can't call it a Christmas tree?
For example...
Because I don't want to call Santa Claus, the male holiday object.
If the township, for example, was selling Christmas trees, you know, as, we're not in the business of doing that, but if we had like a benefit or something like that for some organization, and we're, you know, I don't think you'd have to say they're holiday trees. I know there are also there are cases on point that allow townships and boards of education to have nativity scenes.
Which we do here.
Yeah, which I doubt you would call that something other than a nativity scene. So it doesn't make any logical sense to believe that you would have to. I doubt that there's any case law that would support that. But there are people who feel very strongly about this issue, and they say they're civil rights activists, or not civil rights activists, but civil liberties activists, and you know, there can be a challenge to almost anything. So, but as for putting it in a flyer where you're saying what is on display at the township, it begs the question, because if you could put it on display, you could call it what it is.
Do you have a comment, Ms. Dalton?
I didn't take it to be that we were lighting a holiday tree. I thought it was a holiday celebration where we lit a Christmas tree, where we had a menorah, and where we had a nativity. We also had an Easter egg hunt a few weeks ago at Oak Glen Park,
That's right.
and
We called them Easter
we
eggs.
called them Easter eggs.
We didn't call
and
them
the Easter
April
Bunny
round
was there.
objects.
So I'm not quite sure. I read the email that you're talking about, and I appreciate the sentiments of those who want to make sure that Christ is kept in Christmas, but I don't think that the township did anything wrong or stepped on anyone's toes in the rec department calling it a holiday tree lighting. I don't think that we called it a holiday tree. You know, maybe this is just the lawyer in me saying it was a holiday tree lighting, not a holiday tree lighting.
I think
why
it is
don't
the
why don't
lawyer
we
in
call
you.
it a holiday gathering and a Christmas tree lighting?
Right.
But before I comment about Councilwoman Dalton's comments, I want to know whether she's a Yankee fan or a Met fan.
That's none of anyone's business.
She's a Philly fan.
Look, my only point is, and this may seem trivial, but when I really thought about it, we live in an age where we are so politically correct that I think we begin to lose touch with our culture and the things that are special to each and every one of us. And so when it comes time to light the tree this year, I just would respectfully ask that we call it a Christmas tree, and that we say it's a Christmas tree. If we want to call it a holiday event, as long as we got the word Christmas tree in the same sentence, I think I'll be okay. Does that sound all right?
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I call it a Christmas tree no matter what.
Good, thank you.
No difference.
And the only other comment, North Howell Little League, Central Little League, and Southern Little League have all had their opening days. I had the good fortune of being at all of those events. The Deputy Mayor and Councilman Howell were with me when we were at Howell South Little League, and just a real good time. And it really makes us be reminded of how fortunate we are as a community to have the enormous number of volunteers that are out at these events. When you look at the parents, moms and dads that make those leagues possible, because in our community, it is the parents and the coaches and the other volunteers that make those leagues possible. They're real special events. And also, we are now we are a community, one of the first, I suspect, that has a Challenger League. And North Howell Little League introduced a Challenger League. And it's in no small measure because of the efforts of Deputy Mayor Walsh, who spoke out about that, or spoke for that. The North Howell Little League people were receptive and wanted to do something like that, and I want to applaud his efforts for pushing to make that happen. That was probably the highlight of that day. So nice job. All right, and then final order of business, at least for reports under me, is the celebration of Arbor Day. This is a proclamation from the Office of Mayor. I'll read it briefly. Whereas in 1949, the legislature of the state of New Jersey set aside the last Friday of April as Arbor Day to promote the planting of trees and to encourage the protection of our forests from fires and pests that destroy the beauty and usefulness of our woodlands. Whereas half of New Jersey's total land area is forested and tree covered. And whereas trees play an important role in the ecosystem in which we live, and trees reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil caused by wind and water, the clean air we breathe and the water we drink, produce oxygen, provide habitat for birds, wildlife, and reduce heating and cooling costs by moderate temperatures. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper for fine literature, wood for homes, fuel for fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees provide increased property value, enhanced economic viability, and pleasing aesthetic qualities along the streets and properties in our municipality. And whereas trees planting in yards and farms and schoolyards, parks, and along streets and highways create an enduring heritage for generations that follow. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Joseph M. DeBella, Mayor of Howell Township, do hereby proclaim April 27th, 2007 as Arbor Day in the community of Howell Township, and urge all citizens to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, to support our township's urban forestry program, and I further urge all citizens to plant trees and gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of present and future generations. And this Friday, there are a number of activities across the municipality, both at municipal buildings and at the various schools, in celebration of Arbor Day. Mr. Janetzky, I think you're up.
Sure. First, Mayor, let me apologize. The legislation you were referring to has to do with the COA?
It does.
Okay, I apologize then. Council requested another resolution in support of legislation that's on for tonight. We'll make sure to have that one on for Monday.
Great.
Tuesday, excuse me, next Tuesday.
You know, before and I'm just reminded myself, if you don't mind, Mr. Janetzky, one of the things I think that's worth noting, we had that tragic plane crash here in our community not that long ago, and the council and I all got a copy of a piece of correspondence from Bill Gatto, who's chief of the Ramtown Fire Company, and former chief. That's right. He's now a commissioner, still a volunteer there, and in essence, this email acknowledged that incident, surprisingly enough, was the first time where a true unifying command structure was implemented between police and fire agencies in Howell Township. And the whole genesis of this email was recognizing one of our Howell police officers, a Lieutenant Kudrick, for his assistance that evening, as according to this note from Chief Gatto, Commissioner Gatto, it was a fairly significant issue, and obviously, in particular, Lieutenant Kudrick did a terrific job in working that evening with all of the other agencies. And this is it's not a good thing to talk about, but I think in light of all of the different events that we have to be conscious of, the fact that all of the agencies that are engaged in emergency response worked as well as they did that night, it gives us reason to be grateful and to be thankful that we obviously are prepared in the awful event that we'd ever have to do that. So I wanted to acknowledge Chief Gatto's correspondence and also Lieutenant Kudrick, that he recognized him for that.
Okay. Mayor, a couple house cleaning items. First, we also had a loss in our family a little bit. Mr. Savino's had a loss in his family, and he was working on one of the items before you, 9B-31. Required his coordination of that, so that's being pulled off the agenda this evening.
Thank you.
Also, there were some minor typographical changes on 9A4, the sexually oriented business ordinance, just some minor revisions. And you have that one before you. It's not the same one that was in your packet. And the only other item, Mayor, I want to point out is we had a budget work session scheduled for tomorrow evening. A number of the council members have contacted me with respect to conflicts in schedules, and frankly, in light of the defeated school budget, we're not necessarily ready to meet with you tomorrow either because of other work we have to do. So my proposal is this, that in looking at the agenda, there might be a couple ordinances that would be up for public hearing next week, at next Tuesday's meeting, and that we can go forward with those, but that we devote the rest of the meeting entirely for budget work session. If council's okay with that, and then any add-on business or routine business that we absolutely need to take care of, we can add to the agenda for May 8th when we have the hearing on the wastewater management plan.
So you're saying Tuesday, May 1st?
Correct.
Is when we would deliberate on the budget that night?
Correct.
Does anyone have a problem or issue with that?
No?
We're okay?
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, and that's it.
Nothing else under reports?
No, sir.
Anyone else under reports? Mr. Bongiovanni, Mr. Filiaccio, anyone?
Mayor,
All
could
right.
could I just ask the manager a question?
Go right ahead.
Real quick. Tom, I know just recently we passed the ordinance for the ice cream trucks, that they have to be licensed with the township and,
It's existing legislation. It's been in place for a while, but we sent correspondence to the vendors and a press release to the community reminding them of what to check for
okay.
when there's a vendor in the neighborhood.
Will they have to go through the same process as like a limo driver? Will they have to be licensed, actually be licensed by the town?
There are added requirements because they deal with food,
Right, but.
food handling.
But my point is, most of the time, I know in my own house, and I'm sure the mayor will tell you the same thing, when a kid hears ice cream truck, you give him $2 and say, go, just be careful. Do we have to, are we requiring that these ice cream trucks have a township license number on them so that somebody would know?
That it be posted, yes.
Okay, all right, thank
They
you.
need to be posted, and you ought to ask for them.
That should be,
See them.
that should be on the internet, on our website, to
Yes.
tell people, to make people aware that they can look for that, because most people don't even think to look for such a thing.
The press release we wrote, we sent to the messenger, and we posted it on our website as
Great.
well.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. All right, we have some add-on items that I believe we need to motion to add on. Is that right, Ms. Woolman?
Yes, that's right.
All right, I would just ask the council to quickly look at the add-on items. I'll read them aloud for the benefit of the public. 9B29 is authorizing an amendment to a resolution appointing certified tree expert for this year, Mr. Zigpanic. 9B30 is authorizing the acceptance of performance guarantees for the Learning Experience Daycare Center on Route 9 on the northbound side. 9B31 is abandoning part of an easement.
We're pulling it.
I'm sorry, you're right, that's pulled, sorry. 31 we're pulling, correct? Yeah. Okay. 9B32 is authorizing final sewer improvement for the Seminole development near Kent Road. 9B33 is rejecting all bids for the Secure Our Schools security management system. 9B34 is authorizing the use of state contract for aerial spraying services for gypsy moth program. 9B35 is authorizing acceptance of projects, the acceptance of maintenance bonds and authorization to make payment of final retainage 2006 white fog line striping program. 9B36 is authorizing the use of 2007 state cooperative contracts, I'm sorry. Is that supposed to be co-op?
No, because it was added
Missing
on.
it.
It says
We're missing a hyphen.
COOP. We're missing a little hyphen here. I was going to ask you what a COOP contract was. 9B37 is the 2007 temporary budget appropriations. I'd ask that someone please make a motion to add on items as read excluding 9B31.
So
So-
moved, Mayor.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any items, this is merely to add these on.
Or just add them on.
We're just adding them on. We're going to come back. All right, hearing no comments, roll call please to add on for discussion.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, we're going to go to hearings of citizens to accept public comment on any items that are marked on the agenda as consent agenda items, meaning those items with which we may take action on this evening. The consent agenda items are appropriately referenced on our agenda with asterisks. They begin on page 4 and are the 9B items. They also include any motions normally contained under 9C, and it would also include any of the items we've just added onto our agenda. Anyone from the public who has a question on any of these items, please come forward.
This is not the regular public session, correct? This is just for the consent.
This is just on consent agenda. Okay. As always, Mrs. Dixell, if you just give us your name and address for the record once you get settled, please.
Firing on old jets these days. Barbara Dixell, The Villages, Howell Township. Okay, 9B28. It's a good bill. We used to do 500 feet because we're rural, and then they went back to 200 feet, because that was in the book, but 200 feet is like urban, Newark, but, 300 feet is good, but can they also, when you do this, and it's a wonderful bill, can you post signs on all 4 sides of whatever properties there are?
Barbara, if you can get on the internet and you pull up Assemblywoman Beck's bill, that is part of the bill, is to
Okay,
post signage
yeah.
on all 4 sides.
Okay,
and-
yeah, because some of our properties here are so large
Right.
that 300 feet is noticing a groundhog.
Okay. Anything else, Mrs.
Yes.
Dixell?
9B 34.
9B 34, sure.
Okay, okay, how are they gonna go about doing this spraying? Because pesticides are kind of carcinogenic in there.
Sure. Mr. Chinesky, can you offer any additional explanation on the
I don't think
method for
that's a
spraying?
consent agenda item.
Mayor,
There's no action.
Oh, you're right.
There's no action.
the Public Works Director
Because it's an add-on.
did provide an overview of what this spraying was to entail, so I am just speaking from memory. But essentially, the materials that are used are non-toxic and natural. They're intended to, for a very targeted period of time, prevent a certain biological process, at which point, when that time passes, that material just dissolves.
Which areas of the town are they going to spray, or are they going to spray all of Howell Township?
It's not all of township, or it's not all of the township. It's been the areas they've always done, but in addition to that, in a specific, specifically to this that we have to participate in, it's the residential areas on either side of Aldridge Road as you head towards Route 9.
Okay, so what I would ask you to do, in light of the fact that there's going to be aerial spraying and it's going to fall whenever, to please put good-size ads in newspapers as when they're going to do it and whatever day they're going to do it. Keep your kids in the house, or watch your kids, watch your pets, watch all these things, and make sure, because we don't want anyone to, God forbid, get sick or have any fatalities for anyone breathing in this stuff.
It's a good idea. Mayor, what we've done is sent letters already to each resident that was in a fall area
But in addition,
and advertised.
absolutely, just put nice full-page ads in the newspaper saying, because we don't want anyone to have any ill effects from these spraying things.
In addition, there'll be personnel patrolling the area to just remind people who happen to be
There was
coming
an
out at the
incident a
time.
couple of years ago when somebody in the township got sprayed on and got real sick, and one of his animals got real sick, and I wouldn't want to see that happen again.
Anything else, Mrs. Dixell?
Yeah, 9B 36.
9B 36, okay?
Did I do 9B 35?
You did not do
No,
35.
okay. What, now, that is fog line striping, what, the white lines down the roads? Is that it?
That's correct.
On all the roads?
On whatever roads were on the
Okay.
contract for last year.
Yeah, there was a set number of roads and about 700,000 feet.
Okay, well, you know what also is good? When they put the little metal reflectors in the roadway also, in addition to the, because sometimes when it's really bad visibility and bad weather, sometimes those little metal reflectors are the only things you see. So can anybody consider anything like that in addition to your fog line striping?
I think we'll certainly take it under advisement when we talk
Yeah,
about
because
capital
sometimes,
budget.
especially sometimes when the fog drops and it really gets pea soupy, sometimes if those metal reflectors are in the roadway, that's the only thing you see.
Okay.
And 9B 36, what would that be?
Sure. Do you want to comment, Mr. Chinesky? Go right ahead.
Sure. Essentially, it's a pooling of repurchasing power that the state awards contracts for specific things, and because the state goes out to bid, let's say hypothetically for ice cream, and they get
They
it.
have a license.
Right.
Is it on their car?
And let's say our rec program has to purchase ice cream. Well, we can go to the vendor that the state chose because it advertised in certain bulk quantities.
All right. And I just want to say, I think it's wonderful that we're finally seeing an agenda with full explanations. I think it's absolutely wonderful. Please keep it up, because it does help, even though you have a couple of questions as to some things that are on the agenda, but it does help with the fuller explanations than it's ever been before.
Absolutely
Thank
right.
you.
And that would be 5 minutes.
Thank you.
And then we'll still get the regular citizens.
We will call you back again.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Consent agenda items, Mrs. Smith? Sure, come on up, please. Good evening.
This one wasn't working well at planning board. Pauline Smith, 54 Vanderveer Road. The gypsy moth spraying, maybe I misunderstood or wasn't looking right that day, but I saw the map on the bulletin board out back, and it didn't look as though our area was included, and historically it has been, and we have quite a few woods, and we don't need to lose them to gypsy moths. We've seen devastation in other parts of the country and the state when they haven't been taken care of. And we have
So your concern is the Vanderveer Road area?
Yes, and, well, yeah, and really behind us, Bennett, Vanderveer, Fairfield,
Okay.
back to Merrick. There are quite a few woods back there.
I'll have someone reach out to Ms. Smith tomorrow.
Would you? Okay. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
Mrs. Smith. Anyone else for comments on consent agenda items? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on consent agenda items. Would anyone like a separate vote on any of the consent agenda items?
Let me go through them, Mayor. Give me a moment, please.
Please, go right ahead. For the benefit of the public, these are all of the 9B and 9C items. I do think we probably need 9C3 to be introduced separately since it involves an appointment.
I would like information on 9B3.
9B3.
So I'd like a separate vote on that.
Okay. Any other separate items with respect to consent agenda?
Mayor, I had spoken to Mr. Bongiovanni about 9B18. And I know I had spoken to Mr. Chernesky last week about that road, so I'm wondering if we could discuss that separately.
Sure, 9B18, separate, okay. Any other separate items? All right, well then, hearing no other separate items, I would respectfully request, and just as a reminder, 9B31 has been pulled. So I would request that someone make a motion to move the consent agenda items excluding 9B3, 9B18, and 9C3.
Do you have to?
So moved.
We have a motion?
I'll second.
And a second.
29, Tom? Could we have that?
Oh, you know what, you're right. And you know what, Ms. Dalton, if you wouldn't mind, can we just also, if you'd amend your motion to also have a separate vote, thank you, Mr. Walsh, 9B29.
Certainly, I'll amend the
And you'll agree,
motion.
Mr. Walsh?
Second, yes.
Okay. So we're going to have a roll call vote, please, on all items excluding 9B3, 18, 29, and 9C3. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, I call the council's attention, please, to 9B3. Mr. Chudensky, would you, for the benefit of the council and the public, just give a high-level dissertation of what this, where this came from, please?
Sure. First, I need to acknowledge the work of the engineering staff in preparing these community development block grants. But essentially, this is money that comes down from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development grant program called Community Development Block Grants. When the applications come down, you also receive a map that shows you basically where you're limited to in terms of where you can apply for a grant based on socioeconomic data. We had the engineering department evaluated the roads that would qualify, and then the ones that were in greatest need of repair prepared an application to use the money to redo that this particular road, or actually, this would only cover a portion of it, or, and Mr. Nunziato can discuss more exactly what these funds would cover.
Mr. Nunziato?
As Mr. Chernetsky has said, the funds are being done over several years. What we're going to actually do is there's some areas of Ford Road, which is an eligible area within the township, and we're going to install some drainage and actually wind up reconstructing the roadway when that is finished. Due to the cost estimate of the project, this is the first phase, which will be some of the drainage work. And as we go forward, we will be doing more drainage, more reconstruction, and ultimately, over the course of several years, worth of grants, be able to actually reconstruct and put drainage on a good portion of Ford Road.
Okay.
So this is all from the grants. Is there other money going to be coming in the budget for this Ford Road project, or will all be grant money?
No, sir, it's all from the grant.
Thank you, Mr. Luciano.
Okay, any other questions on 9B3?
Mayor,
Sure.
Mr. Nunziato, do you know if we have any pending planning board applications along this road? What I don't want to see is we go ahead and do all of this work, and then we have an applicant come in a month after you're done and wants to rip it up, or reconfigure the road because
No,
he's got, site triangle issues.
Right. No, that is a good question, and quite frankly, that is sometimes why we actually delay in some of the work or the overlay or the reconstruction, and sometimes we make an applicant do his fair share. In this case, when we actually had considered Ford Road, again, one of the things we have to concern ourselves with is Ford Road is one of the only areas in the township that actually qualifies due to the criteria required. It could very well be in this case that there may be areas of Ford Road that were not at the time, but now may be potentially slated for development, and we could certainly work with the applicants, either maybe put their improvements in prior to or work in conjunction with. We have done that in the past on road contracts that were done just within the township's capital improvement program, so that does happen.
All right, anything else on 9B3? Hearing none, roll call, please, on 9B3.
I didn't have a motion in a second. I don't have noted.
I'm sorry? Okay. We do need I thought we had a motion in a second.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Walsh. Any additional comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, next is 9B18. This is authorizing acceptance of performance guarantees. I think, Mr. Howell, you had a question on this? Go right ahead, sir.
Mayor, I had spoken to the manager last week because we actually had an applicant come to the planning board that wanted to open Ramtown Greenville Road, and I was concerned about the road having just been paved within the last 2 years and them opening the road. And I asked Mr. Bongiovanni about that this evening as well. My question to them was, Ramtown Greenville Road is still under New Jersey American bond. Are we allowed to tell people they can open a road when somebody else holds a warranty on it? So I don't know where we go with that.
Mr. Bongiovanni, did you have a chance to?
No, I just went over this tonight. I would think that...
Mr. Bongiovanni, if you could just pull the mic a little closer, I'm sorry.
I think that we have a problem in that planning board has approved this the site, granted a subdivision approval, and there is no other access to any public water or any other supply of water for the development unless they do the road opening. So that's the main problem. Now, whether or not New Jersey American could possibly raise a complaint about it is an issue that hasn't really come across my desk, or as far as I know, any official's desk. We could make contact with New Jersey American and see if this in any way, if they interpret this as affecting their obligations. But other than that, there is a problem. If we don't allow it, what are the members of the public going to do? The ones who have been, who are property owners or prospective property owners of the subdivision that was lawfully granted by the planning board. What are they going to do?
Mr. Nunziato, go right ahead, sir.
What we've typically done in the past, there is an ordinance in our code book. It's not a land use ordinance. It's actually in the general ordinances. It's a separate chapter. And under road openings, the council actually has the ability to grant a waiver. And historically, what we've done in the past, when it has been a road that's been under the 5-year moratorium, typically a utility company would come in and apply to the engineering department for road opening. We deny it, then they come to the council and they make their presentation and they put their merits on the table, and we can then enforce any type of special conditions, compaction, infrared treatment of the road surfaces. We haven't, in the 10 years that I've been doing it here, we haven't really denied anybody and been challenged in court. What we've normally done is just put special conditions on it, allowed them to do it, because in the ordinance, it explains a process that's supposed to be followed by which, before any of this work is done, all the applicants or the affected parties are notified so that they could get their work in prior to this happening. So typically what we do is, on the rear end of it, the back end, we allow this opportunity to make their openings in a newly paved road, however, have some special conditions for compaction, surface treatment, and maybe hold the bond even longer because of the fact that it's been recently paved. And that's normally how we do treat it.
Okay.
Bill, I think my bigger question was, does New Jersey American have a right then to say, I want my bond money back if you're letting people open up the road I hold a warranty on?
No. Normally we don't do that. No, they're required to meet their obligations of their road opening permit, regardless of what else happens.
And as I said to Mr. Howell earlier, they are supposed to, anybody who does the road opening has to repair it to the level it was in before the road opening.
Right, but I think maybe what's a little different over there is New Jersey American holds the bond, but Parkway Water is a water company. Parkway Water will be opening the road that New Jersey American has a bond on.
Well, certainly the potential is there for Parkway Water to come in and do whatever they want to do, and then certainly New Jersey American say, well, gee, the road was fine until someone else got involved. So the potential is there, certainly.
What would be a solution to this? Or is there none, you're telling me?
There's none on that situation.
I might prefer to let sleeping dogs lie, so.
Now what?
Let sleeping dogs lie on this one.
Okay. I'll take that under advisement.
All right, any other comments on 18? All right, hearing none, I need a motion and a second, please, on 9B18.
So moved.
We have a motion. We need a second.
Second, Mayor.
Okay, any additional comments or remarks?
The council approved this sewer development by resolution on September 20th, 2005, correct?
Yes.
So we,
Yes.
in adopting this, we're just adopting something the council already gave to a developer.
And also the engineering department has approved of the cost estimates and the performance bond involved, and we've, done the due diligence we're supposed to do.
And I understand the road was paved since September 30th, 2005. Well, what did we do to notify? I mean, obviously whoever paved the road should have been told that this approval was coming.
Well, it was New Jersey American that paved it, and we've had issues, and Mr. Nunziato will tell you, I believe the number now is 1,900 plus linear feet of cracking in this road that they put down 2 years ago, and there's more now that still need to be repaired. So what the problem that I have is New Jersey American going to be able to look to this and say, hey, look, we don't have to fix anything anymore because you let other people cut into the road that we held the bond on, so now fix it yourself, and you're on the hook for it. That's the issue. That's the issues that I have.
That's a complete different issue, because what you're saying now, and I understand what your concern is, and that's a great concern. But I don't think that in this particular situation that there's anything that anybody can do except hold your breath.
I'm tired of seeing roads get dug up after they're repaved.
We have an ordinance against it.
I'm tired. I see it all over. I see it all over Howell Township at different times. I'm tired of it personally.
I think perhaps what we would do is send a letter to the utility advising them that ahead of time that we expect them to be fully compliant with their bond and to fix the road regardless of this approval, and then just put them on notice that that's our expectation, and wait for a response, which I hope there will be none.
Right, the only thing that concerns me with that is we're asking one water utility company to maintain a bond on a road, and you're going to let another water utility company that they went back and forth for a year about running this line up the road to start with.
But does...
I think as long as, just some experience with utilities, they always they have work to do in your community. They'll be back to do more. I think what's incumbent upon us before is to make sure we document that the road's not performing.
That's what I was,
On an ongoing basis.
Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
I think that it would be extremely prudent of us to send a letter now, before the road is opened, in response to what Mr. Howell is saying, that the road is not where it should be with the standards, and that should be duly noted, and we also should send carbon copy it to the developer that is going to be on there, so that he understands what he's up against. Just so that it doesn't come back on the township's responsibility.
Right, that's probably the best we
And
can do at this point.
that's really what we need to be concerned about, what we're responsible for and what it's going to cost the taxpayers.
All right, so does anyone have an objection to what Mrs. Showmaker described as an ancillary resolution to doing this?
No,
Okay.
I think that was a good way to go.
Okay. All right, hearing no other comments, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
No.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, 9B29. This is the appointment for the certified tree expert. Ask a member of the council to please enter a motion.
So move, Mayor.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or remarks?
Mr. Zigpanik does a fine job for the community.
I concur. Any other remarks? Okay, here, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Bongiovanni, this was corrected?
Because the previous resolution had the old compensation formula, I believe. So this is just a correction.
And the compensation was lowered?
Yes. I think
Thank
it's
you.
$15,000 lower. I can't really remember, but
Okay.
significantly.
Ms.
Okay.
Dalton.
But am I correct that the compensation is linked more now to payment through fees
Yes, there's
from
more
developers?
escrow, billing towards escrow. And this was also in compliance with, I think, the bid specifications that Mr. Panic sent in.
Great.
So there won't be a set salary for that position paid by the tax base?
There is, but it's a much smaller one. And
I believe it comes out of Shade Tree Fund, correct?
I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think it's $10,000 where it was previously 25.
And this is not a pensionable position, correct? They do not go into the pension system?
No, it's not a full-time.
Excuse me?
No.
It is not a pensionable position, no.
Thank you.
Nor is it eligible for benefits. All right, any other comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Absolutely.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes, and call the council's attention to 9C3 with the very untimely passing of former Councilman Lucy. There is a need to fill his MRSA appointment, so I'd ask a member of the council to entertain a motion.
Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we appoint Mary Lou Lucy to fill the slot left vacant by the untimely passing of her husband.
We have a motion, we need a second.
I'll second it, Mayor.
Any comments or remarks? I'll make a comment. I want to thank the council majority. I think this is a very fine thing to do. Any other comments or remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, I think that covers all the consent agenda items. Is that right? We did, yep, those, we did all the total and the separate items. So we will go to unfinished business, public hearing on ordinances. We will begin with 8A1.
Mayor,
I'm sorry, go right ahead.
sorry, you were to have a hearing of citizens beyond the consent agenda.
You're right, I apologize. We're moving right along, okay. All right, we are going to open up the meeting to members of the public. We had our public sign-in sheet. I just want to remind everyone from the public that Mr. Czerniecki will, either he or Mrs. Schlegel, will attempt to keep a sense of the running of the clock, if you will, and we ask everyone to attempt to keep their comments to the 5-minute parameters that we've set so that everyone can have an opportunity to be spoken before the hour gets too late. So ask everyone to please be conscious of that. The first person is Edwin J. Kelly. Mr. Kelly, please come on up, sir. If you just introduce yourself for the record, and it says here you'd like to talk about the American flag display.
My name's Edwin J. Kelly, 75B, William and Mary Square, Freehold, New Jersey, 07728. That's the problem that we have in Howell here, that people that live in Howell, they got a freehold address. Okay? Since the last time I was here in front of the committee, which was May 3rd of 2006, there has been a lot of changes. I see we have some new people. Congratulations. Since that time, I made a report, and the next day, I was taken to court for trespassing and stealing. The charges were dropped later on, but I still had to go. This is one of the things that I've been trying to do about the American flag. I get no help from veterans organizations, from the Girl Scouts, from the Boy Scouts, and that's what they learn in their handbooks. There's a lot of veterans in this town that stay in the shadows and do not say anything about the way the American flag is displayed. Also, I've been on the garbage website. It's not your website, sir. I just want to let you know. They used portion of my last report to go against you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize for that part of it. But I wish they would have put something in there about the American flag, because that was part of the whole report, not just that one. Being that I have another problem, which I'll address later on, I have not been able to hand out the Our Flag folders that I used to hand out to businesses and to residents that are not displaying the flag properly. Okay? So instead of doing that, I started working for the state, with the state, I'm sorry, and we have gotten a official notification channel from the state to all the counties, which are 53 counties in the state of New Jersey. And then one of the counties is, of course, Monmouth County. They now notify every town when the flag is supposed to be at half-mast or back up again, and the reason why the flag is down. A lot of people see it, but they don't know why it's down. You gotta get that information out, and I'd like to use the messenger the next time you do your summer thing to to get the message down to the residents. Okay, I'll tell you, you've heard me say it before, the Chamber of Shame. They, members, do not display the flag properly. And you can't get the non-members to display the flag properly if the members are displaying it wrong. And I have used Just Carpets many times with their flags out by the highway. I see now that they fixed the place up. They bought 10 new flags, but they don't have lights on them. They are not all-weather flags, and that's just an example of what's going on.
Mayor, it's been 4 minutes.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Kelly?
I got just a couple of seconds. I think
You got about a minute.
I would have brought my 3-minute egg thing, but I didn't bring it with me. I could have turned it over. Okay. And as we have another problem. One of the official flag alert things was to get to the Fire Bureau. That took 5 months to get the commissioners and the chiefs to okay that the township could notify the Fire Bureau, which was Chief Hotmar, and he would send out a email to every volunteer fire department, okay? We have one fire department that has paid people. They're there 5 days a week, but they're not allowed to touch the volunteer fireman's flag. And sometimes they don't get the information. We have, when I say we, I have worked with the manager and the deputy manager on getting the fire company the information, because Southern Firehouse is the only firehouse that's on Highway 9. And everybody passes that going to church, going to shop, going to the dentist, going any place. And if they're not putting the flags down, it's a shame.
5 minutes, Mayor.
The other thing is, of course, I got to make a correction. I used to call it the Howell Township Engineering Department Award for Disorderly Person. I'd like to change that to Howell Township Building Department. And it's still not resolved by the police chief. And you know what I think about him. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Gino Delvascano. And Commander Novick, are you coming up separately or together? Separately. Terrific. Mr. Chaplain, sir, good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, ladies, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Yankee fan, sir.
Name is Gino Del Vescovo.
Hi.
I live in Howell, 8 Briarcliff Court.
Welcome.
It would really take me more than 5 minutes if I wanted to express my true feelings. I'm a member of the VFW 9691. I'm looking at some notes that I've scribbled down. I wonder really if the council knows what the VFW does for the Howell community. We had to go to Farmingdale to get a meeting hall. They don't even charge us rent. We can't get a room in Howell. We have our charter in Howell. We started looking for a meeting hall in Howell 8 years ago. We've had the runaround for 8 years. 2 years ago, they told us we would have the OEM building as soon as they cleaned it out. It took them 2 years, and then they tell us we need $130,000 to fix the building. Okay, we're not looking for a liquor license. I'm not looking for a club hall. Okay, I'm looking for a building that we can use for vets, whether they're VFW, whether they're American Legion, whether they're Purple Heart. We want to make it an information center for our vets in the area. Okay? Now, you had an overrun on a Little League building. I believe it was $50,000. They found the money. Good. It's a good organization, but we can't get a dime. Okay? Now, let's see what else I have here. The only money we are able to raise is money that we sell for the poppies. That's the only money we have to raise. We don't have a building to run affairs. We don't have a building to run a breakfast. We don't have a building to run a supper. We don't have a building to run a bingo. Okay? We take in approximately $4,000. Does anyone on the council know how much we've donated to the people in the county, in the town of Howell? We've in excess of $4,000. It includes gifts, Voice of America. It includes, I'm getting nervous now, I'm getting hot. It includes scholarships. We donate to the young men that make Eagle Scout. We send troops, we send packages to our troops in Iraq. We don't advertise. Maybe that's our problem. We need a PR guy. I doubt very much how much of this information that the council has. They'd get us something. Something. We're not asking for the Taj Mahal. We're asking for a building where we can raise some money, where we can do more. We can do a lot more. I'll defer to our commander before he gets mad at me.
Comments very well said.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commander Novick, you're up next, sir. Welcome.
Mayor, council, fellow citizens, thank you for letting me have this opportunity to speak. First thing I'd like to announce is our Memorial Day services will be held at 10:30, Howell Township Municipal Building at the Veterans Memorial, and at 11 a.m. at Lutz Park Veterans Memorial in Farmingdale. We'd appreciate it if you'd come out, and if the township can entice some of the fellow citizens to come out, because with almost a population of 60,000, we get about 15 citizens. So,
Mr. Chudensky, on that score, Commander, if I may, can we have this posted on the website, please?
Yes, sir.
Prominently. Go ahead, Commander.
All right, thank you on that. As far as getting a building, what we were hoping we were going to get, the old OEM building. We wanted to turn it into a veteran center and an educational center, you know, to let the children of the township see what their fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers sacrifice, so they could be out here playing Little League on a Sunday, on a sunny day. And not to mention their fathers and grandfathers, and some of them making the ultimate sacrifice, like we had two of our township citizens make. So we feel we were a little bit taken aback when we got the last engineering report on the OEM building, because when we looked at it a year ago and 2 years ago, we were prepared to chip in, put a new roof, new heating system. And now when we had the opportunity to get the building, or close to getting the building, you came up with a list with approximately $130,000 to $160,000 for repairs. So I don't think the township was bargaining in good faith. I would like the township to give us a little more assistance in finding an area. I won't dredge up the past, it's all in the record, but going ahead, I'd like the council to work with us a little more diligently, and the engineering department, who are getting us a viable building, piece of land, or whatever, so we can promote these veterans' activities. I mean, every day you see in the newspaper, here's a U.S. News and World Report. I don't have to show you this, but I will. Cheating our vets, all right? Whether it's in the hospitals, where the guys have a high survival rate, but they're terribly mangled or burned. And any vet knows that this has been ongoing in this country for a long time. But a guy that, or a woman that does their duty to their country, they do it, they come back, and they don't start beating their chest or thumping on the table. But for a township of 60,000 people, I think we need some kind of meeting place and information place for our veterans. I'd hate some of these guys to come back and you hear these horror stories. I think we should step up to the plate and do something about it. So going forward, we'd appreciate your cooperation in this endeavor. I just want to say on Howell Day, we set up a booth every year, and one of the greatest things was last year, some lady comes up, and she says, I got to show you my 3-year-old. She brings her little girl up there, and that little girl whipped a smart salute, recited the Pledge of Allegiance, and went to Water Arms immediately. So I was very impressed with that, and I hope we can instill this in the rest of our children in Township. Thank you very much. Hope to see you at Memorial Day.
Thank you, Commander. Is that right? Good, smart child.
Can we comment on this?
You want to comment on it now? Go right ahead.
Yeah, I would-
Deputy Mayor. Was there- Oh, you want to wait till we're done with the public?
Okay.
All right. Mr. Volpe. Welcome, Mr. Volpe. Good to see you again. I'm going to embarrass Mr. Volpe, one of our local business owners. Got a great florist shop. Patronizes business on Route 9 right next to McDonald's. If you need a good florist, there's a number of them. This is one of them. So patronize our local businesses. Hello, Mr. Volpe.
First of all, I want to thank the council and the mayor for finally addressing the problem that we have with these adult stores, especially the one that is right on Route 9 in between 2 nail salons.
Mr. Volpe, could you hold on 1 second? Mr. Stanbury, would you close that door behind? Please, thank you, sir. You could come in. We'd like you to be on the inside. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry, Mr. Volpe.
In between 2 nail salons, my florist, McDonald's, which is about 250 feet away, which the patrons that go into this business park in their parking lot and walk across. Finally, we're going to, with the signs or whatever, but we have to go a step further and maybe close these places down, especially this one, which is right behind Winston Park. Okay, there's homes right behind this building, which is a hot skip jumping away. And since I've been at my florist for 4 years now, you can imagine what I have seen, which I don't want to say, but it's a disgrace that you have a landlord who goes out, solicits this business because the first one went out of business. And how, it's not your fault, I know it's grandfathered in. That grandfathered in, it's got to stop. It's got to stop. When the first one went out of business, how do we allow this other one to go in, which displays everything? Through the windows, you see all this crap, excuse my language. And Route 9 is backed up from 3:30 until 6 with traffic. You look over, you can see right through the windows, and you see everything, okay? I complained to the owner about covering the window. The next day, he didn't even bother to come to me and, say, listen, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. Maybe we can tell this owner to black out his windows, so you can't see through this store. Like I said, you have a landlord that goes out and solicits this business. I have a store that's grandfathered in, just come in. He lives in Lakewood. We have the owner who lives in Jackson. They don't care about Howell. They don't care about our kids. They don't care about people walking through. It's prom season. It's graduation season. You have these teenagers walking back and forth, and they're gonna look, okay? We have to go a step further. We gotta be proactive and say, you know what? If it's gonna go to court, you know what? Where do you hurt them? In their pockets. That's all I have to say. And hopefully, the previous council, obviously, they were sleeping at the switch. They didn't, realize if one goes out of business, say that, okay, we can't open no more, that's it. But obviously, somebody wasn't doing their homework, and this other company came in and opened up. And it's worse than it was with the first, at least the first one hid their stuff. They had cartoon movies in the front, in the back they had their videos, whatever. This place, they don't care. The signs, and like I said, you look right through that window and you see everything. I have a 9-year-old daughter. I want to play catch out in the parking lot with her when it's slow. You know, I got to go this way so she don't look at the store. And they park it all different because the people are embarrassed to park in their parking lot. So they park in my parking lot, McDonald's parking lot. And they actually cross over Route 9 and park in a lawyer's office and cross over Route 9. So that's...
Talking across the highway?
You can't imagine what I say.
Is that Mr. Chabel's office?
I'm saying, do they park across the highway
I'm not allowed to use his
at
name. He's
the
threatening Mr.
others'
Chabel.
lawyers, or
Yes,
on the
and
same
actually,
side?
they park there and actually run across the highway. And that's...
About the Chabel and Manny office, maybe, or the Levinson Axelrod, but they shouldn't be parking there.
I run out and I tell people to move.
It's a serious issue, and
Very serious.
we will comment on it when we get
Like
through
I
with the
said, you
public.
can't imagine what I have seen there since I've been there for 4 years. It's just mind-boggling.
Thank you for
And
your comments.
also, Winston Park has a schoolyard. Not a
Mhm.
schoolyard, they have a park back there.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what these laws mean. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a councilman. I pay my taxes. But it seems to me that this place shouldn't be there. It shouldn't be there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Volpe.
Mayor, may I just clarify one item? I noticed the deputy mayor wanted to comment previously, just to give you an update, because we're still kind of new with these protocols. The idea is that once we close to the public,
Yes.
council's free to talk about what they heard and comment on it.
Yep.
And before any decision is made, if you want to take action on an issue, which we try not to do, you could request for it to be listed
Mhm.
on the next agenda. But if it's a pressing matter, it would be open for debate, and then you can move forward from there.
Okay, terrific, thank you. Did you have something? Mr. Magid, welcome, sir, come on up.
Good evening. I'm Abe Magid, 89 Mariners Cove.
Good evening, Mr. Magid.
Good evening to you. Certainly, Christmas is Christmas. There's no question about it. Don't charge my time on that.
That's the mayor's call.
I'd like to make a comment about this without charging my time, because, can I have that extra?
You have to ask him.
No.
Charges time.
Goodbye, Charlie. You're off.
Go ahead, Mr. Magid, what do you have for us?
Yeah. Howell Township, I think, is called the 11th safest city, maybe in the United States. Great place to live. Okay. Maybe New Jersey. Okay.
11th
No.
safest in the country.
Thank you. Go. My wife told me I know it's right. No question.
Smart man.
A loving man. Intelligent, too. Right. I think this township, am I still on the,
You're on the clock.
You're on the clock now.
on my own time?
You are.
I go, oh, the guy. No, I want to talk about this. All right, I'll talk about it another time. It's unfortunate. Can you give me an extra minute for this?
Yeah, it's not me.
Okay, Abe.
What do you have for us, Mr. Magid?
No, before I talk about this,
Okay.
can I comment about this?
Mr. Magid, the floor is yours. Comment on anything you'd like.
But I want a couple of minutes for this. Well,
Okay. Just, we're losing time as you continue. Go ahead. What do you have for us?
You're an honest man. I want to hear you say it. You said it.
No.
Howell Township has a wonderful moment of opportunity here to create something called Legion of Decency. And in conjunction maybe with other townships. Communicate with them. Because there's an adult bookstore somewhere on the other side of 9 before you get to the overpass, 195. It's been there for ages, stands by itself. Something painted yellow or something. Doesn't mean anything to people. They say, oh, that place, right by. This is so different that it may end up, interestingly, Council, in the U.S. Supreme Court because of a basic principle that cannot be denied. We are not talking about the material they have in that store. Huh? We're talking, as this gentleman said, on our children being degraded, emotionally abused, whatever language you want to put, and start a program going so that if that store remains, It's sealed. Now, I clearly remember someplace, I wasn't a participant, near the Collingswood Circle, there was some little building, I think, on Route 33. Solid stone. People knew about it, went inside. Fine, what do I care? This is not just offensive to you and I and everybody else. We don't know the damage this can be doing to the emotions of children. He just mentioned young children, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I think a classic case, and we can lead that charge, 11th safest community in the United States. Let's see how high we can go on this one. I know there's an ACLU. You have to call it a holiday tree, whatever you want. I don't care. I call it a Christmas tree. And by the way, the season is not a holiday. It's Christmas. That's what it is. A cat is a cat. A cat is not a dog. You know, it's that simple. I recommend that you, Mr. Mayor, and the council get on the stick on this one and push it to its maximum pressure so that we don't end up as wimps in front of the ACLU that will grab any trinket and run with it. Let them run with it. Because I guarantee you one thing, if I can. Almost the entire United States, everybody, children pretty much, will be behind it. And hopefully it gets to the Supreme Court of the United States. I would want it to.
It's been 4
and have
minutes,
it all
Mayor.
out. Okay, I'm done with that. Please, think about it.
Okay.
I'm
Did
on
you
my
say
own
it's 4
time.
minutes?
4 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So in conclusion, Mr. Magid, what else do you have for us?
No, opening, like a file.
In conclusion.
5 minutes, what do I have, 5 minutes?
You got a minute left.
Let's
What was
go.
that again?
The mayor, you may,
You made a commitment, I have 4 minutes, 5 minutes.
I made a commitment.
I interpreted it that way too. Let's go, Abe. Come
Well,
on.
well, you can
5
make a-
minutes on next. Let's go.
Hey,
Well,
no
Mary-
emotional pressure here, we gotta deal direct,
Abe, let's get it going.
man to man. Out the door,
Let's get it going, Abe.
28 seconds.
double out the door. Okay, I just spoke with our very, very excellent, I wanna commend him, the township engineer, William Nunziato. Right. Now, at the last meeting, he showed me a letter, came from the DEP in response to his letter. His went out March 23rd. They said they received it March 26th. They responded March 29th. They asked for all kinds of things. And Mr. Nunziato said, not only did he respond, but he's been calling people at the DEP constantly, but they say all road leads to Rome, all roads here lead to ruin. Because there's a fellow named, top guy, Patrick Shepard, and he will not respond to Mr. Nunziato. And so it's open-ended. But now I come back to you, Mr. Mayor, to this Township Council. I had told you back in November to get this rolling. I told you back in December. I told you back in January and February. You didn't do a thing. You read all kinds of stuff to me. And yes, we had a lot of water a week ago. Ran right up to the top of the thing. Didn't flood the property because we didn't have a second day of heavy rain, or third. I said, Mr. Mayor, you and the council, whoever's on the council then, last year and the council now, was negligent and remiss, and you're paying, no, not you, we may pay the price for our Mariners Cove because you didn't make this request in January or December or even February and didn't until March 23rd. And by the way, when you did, you asked for the whole 5 miles, and maybe that makes a difference for the Manasquan River, rather than that small section, half a mile or whatever it is, or less, at Mariners Cove. So I want to tell you this. Should we flood? Hopefully we don't. What will be your thoughts and position that you didn't send this to DEP last December or January, knowing full well it might take a while, and we're, well into April, who's to say, you, that we're not going to have 3 days of heavy rain flooded? I told you were negligent then, and keep hoping we don't get flooded, but if we do, you're all responsible for it. I still have time. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Okay, Mr. Robert Crawford. Come on up, Mr. Crawford. Good evening.
Yankee fan, 2 autistic grandchildren.
Oh, no, Mr. Crawford.
How are you, Mr. Crawford? Good
Hi.
evening.
Hello, everybody. Here to, I would,
If you just please introduce yourself, Mr.
yeah,
Crawford,
Bob
with your name and
Crawford,
address.
the Villages.
Okay.
I was here back in December, I think it was, about the problem with standing water on some of the roads in the villages. I even sent some pictures.
Mr. Crawford, would you pull the microphone a little closer, please?
Is that better? Okay. I even sent you some pictures.
You did.
The rain came back, the pictures were there. This time it was a little heavier because I got my ankles wet this time, but I'm still concerned. I know that there was a little patchwork done the other day by somebody from the township, and I appreciate that, but it was like putting a Band-Aid on a broken arm. You know, it was nice, but they didn't finish the job. The standing water is still there. I don't know the last time you took care of the roads in the villages. I recall the 82 ordinance, which says you are responsible for it. Does anybody know when you did any road maintenance the last time?
Mr. Chansky, would you comment on this?
I don't have the dates. I know Dag Hammarskjöld's fairly recently done. And then another road was partially done, and then in terms of an overlay, and then we've been doing patchwork, as Mr. Crawford explained, throughout the community.
Okay.
But,
all right. Are we on a schedule, or is this one of these hit and miss type things?
I think what I can tell you in
Mayor,
fairness...
I'm sorry, just need to cut you off. The association has hired an attorney.
That's what I was just going to say, is that
okay.
we're not in a position to comment publicly on this because there is ongoing dialogue
I know
with
about
counsel
the
for the association.
attorney-to-attorney dialogue, but it's like anything else. Until the law changes, you got to abide by it. You know, if they change the speed limit, if they tell you they're going to change the speed limit on Route 9 to 65 next month, and you go out there tonight and do 65, you're going to get a ticket. So until the law changes, you should be abiding by it. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you for your comments, Mr. Crawford. We appreciate it. Mrs. Dixell, come on up.
Joe, while she's coming up, we stand and lives 5 Points. What is that, Asbury?
Yes. Asbury, yeah. Hello, Mrs. Dixell. Good evening.
Barbara Dixell, The Villages. Okay, one thing I got a call from a resident in The Villages. The house in The Villages is 53B. The people in the new development in back of us just put a swing set in with a long extension that they say is on the buffer, or is close to the buffer. So could somebody go out and measure it and see what the story is?
53B?
53B in The Villages.
Okay.
So the new house, it's Village 2, but the new house in back of there, so I went up the hill and looked at it today. It looks awful close, but I'm not an
Mr.
engineer.
Nunziato took record of it. Okay, thank you. What else,
Okay,
Mrs. Dixell?
I'm gonna say also something you may think is silly, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I know you're gonna disagree with me, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Anyway, there was a case before the planning board, and it seems that in Howell Township, there is no ordinance that we have on the books for storage sheds, storage units, so these storage facilities that have these compartments, storage compartments. And there's no ordinance on the books to provide any type of sanitary sewer or sanitary facilities in these places. And there was one case that did come to the planning board this past week, and there was none, because there's no ordinance, there was no sanitary facilities provided for. I find it hard to believe that you can't even, that we should craft an ordinance and put an outhouse back there. Because if somebody has a very severe need for a bathroom all of a sudden, what are you going to do? Go out there, pick up your leg, or go out in the woods and take a couple of leaves? What are you going to do? I mean it very seriously. People may laugh, but it may be a very serious thing. So somebody craft an ordinance in this town and require some type of sanitary facility it may not have to be city sewer or septic or something, but at least a porta potty someplace on,
Next.
that if somebody has a severe need, that they'll be able to use some type of sanitary facility. That's something I think that every commercial establishment in this town should have. Anyway, okay. Okay, getting back to the C1 designation. I can't tell you how many, I'm sure I've spent $200 or $300 already sending out mail for C1 designation of the Manasquan. I know I've spoken to everybody, I mean, to continue the work that Don's been doing, the Environmental Commission's doing. If we are sorely in need of getting this C1 from where it stopped at West Farms Road to all the way to Turkey Swamp State Park, we are not the C1. For the entire Manasquan, there's some cases coming up to the planning board, the zoning board, that are gonna seriously impact our water, that going to contaminate our water. I've written to Senator Singer again, and I'm very sorry to say that as many times as I've written to the governor and or Lisa Jackson, I've never gotten an answer. I find that very distressing, that your officials, even at the DEP, don't even answer you. And I'm sending out official documentation, you know, of the maps, the aerial maps, the tax map, the itemizing what's coming on like on White Clough Mills Road, 4 things that are going to mail. We're going to get slam dunked, but good. And it's distressing. So again, I sent Senator Singer another letter today. I mean, is there any way the township can send out another letter in favor of a C1 designation to finally correct and close the gap in the C1? They just don't hear us. And from what I understand, speaking to someone today, they named the swimming river, and that's down, I think, 520. That's
537.
why they named the swimming river. Now, what the heck is the matter with us? We're like stepchildren, and there's many times I know you've crafted ordinance, you've crafted resolutions. Every board, the planning board, the environmental commission, Senator Singer. I mean, I don't know. It's like, why don't they listen? And the only other thing I'm going to say is, again, I kind of agree with the gentleman that came here that the...
Been 5 minutes, Mayor.
Okay, I'm sorry, that the vets get a poor shake. They really do. I'm going to tell you, sadly, and my husband may not agree with me, but we were recalled for the Berlin crisis many years ago, and we know what the families are going through now with the Iraq crisis. And some families got men, kept their jobs when they came back and got paid. My husband lost his job. He came back to no job. And we had to start all over again, flat broken, penniless, but we did. And my husband served this country with pride. He's an American Legion member, but believe me, you know, when they put up all these memorials, the World War I memorial, the World War II memorial, and I had written to the then president and said, well, what about all these men and women that served their country and were recalled to active duty for the Bay of Pigs, and what about them? At least say thank you. Do you know what we got in the mail? I got a postcard in the mail from the then president that says, thanks for serving your country, in a medal in a plastic box. That's not, you know, maybe it's time that the vets who've served this country and given of themselves and given of their lives got a little respect.
Thank you for your comments, Mrs. Dixon. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Frank Davis. Welcome, Mr. Davis. God bless you. Good evening, Mr. Davis. If you just give us your name and address.
Good evening. Frank Davis, 39 Pine Needle Street.
Mr. Davis.
I'm here to question a ordinance, believe it or not, over a portable basketball net. Seems frivolous, but it's kind of important to our family. I have 4 kids under the age of 9, and directly behind my house on Pine Needle Street is a cul-de-sac with a township throughway. It was on the tax map. It was considered a road, but it's actually a double sidewalk. It's not able to be driven through. It's more or less an easement. What we had done was put a portable basketball net at the end of this area for the kids to play and some neighborhood kids to play. We've been running into multiple complaints from 2 of the adjacent neighbors concerning this net. They basically don't want kids in the cul-de-sac. I was visited by Mr. Howell Saturday, and I want to clarify the rules, the actual rule, saying that I cannot do this. I received a summons in the winter, paid the fine basically to talk to the judge. And he had said that I could return the court, because it is on wheels, I can move it whenever I want to. He said after the appropriate date, I could return it to the area it was in. So now I receive this, this new piece of information. I just want to know where I stand. Mr. Howell was talking about a sum of money for an additional ordinance. It's just a safe place for the kids to play. It keeps them off of Pine Needle Street, which is actually a very busy street. The neighborhood kids in the area, they play kickball there, they play soccer, they shoot a couple hoops now and then. More or less the two adjacent neighbors, I'm not going to point any fingers or name any names, but they complain over and over and over about more or less nothing. There's just some kids in the cul-de-sac. I really can't see the problem with it. We try to keep them off their property as best we could. I don't see them doing any harm. Like I said, these are all kids under the age of 10. And again, I just want to know where I stand with this observation.
You want to comment, Mr. Chuniatsky?
Well, first, we don't have a policy that authorizes roads to be used for anything other than through traffic. So the fact
It's
that...
actually not a road, sir. It's a double sidewalk.
But are they playing in a road?
No. I'm keeping them in it's a cul-de-sac with a double sidewalk throughway. That on the tax map, it's considered a road, but it actually is not.
I guess I'm not understanding.
What it is Orchard Court was actually a road at one time. And what now it is a cul-de-sac, a dead-end cul-de-sac. There actually is no houses anywhere near this area.
But the cul-de-sac is a paved area.
True.
Okay, so it's a road.
Okay.
Okay, it's a road. So the point is this, is that we, as a matter of policy, have said that roads are not recreational areas. If you choose to do any sort of recreation on a road as a parent, you do that at your own risk. Now, we do have a policy with respect to how we go about removing these structures to accommodate public services, like leaf collection, snow removal, so on and so forth. So it's really a matter that's not addressed in our codes. But I would say this, I think from my experience with respect to neighborhood disputes, it would be virtually impossible to legislate each and every one. And as a result, we've set up a mediation process through our municipal court system. And I find that these sort of matters are best addressed first through there.
Can I just question Mr. Howell about the additional, you had said a large sum of money for an additional ordinance. What was that in reference to?
If I could, what I tried to explain to Mr. Davis,
Yes.
when I stopped by his house at 11:30 on Saturday morning was, wouldn't it just be nicer if you took the basketball net off the street you don't live on, so that the people who did live on that street don't have to have your kids playing by their house, instead of the township incurring the expense of having to write an ordinance making you remove the basketball net from the street? You know, be a good neighbor to the people that live behind you and have lived there for 45 years.
Mr. Howell, if I could interrupt, me and my wife actually take care of that piece of property because it's right next door to our house. We pick up broken bottles, we rake leaves, we pick up limbs when the township does not come to clean that area up. We do our share of that area when the adjacent neighbors do not.
Well, Mr. Davis, I think what I would tell you to do is to go to the township's website if you have an issue with the cleanliness of that property and fill out an RTC so that the DPW knows that there's a problem there and then they can send somebody out to clean it. Because I would certainly hate to see you get injured on township property cleaning up stuff that, you know, you don't have to clean up. That's, you live here, you pay taxes, that's the township's responsibility to clean
I
it.
guess more or less what I'm asking is, again, I'm not pointing any fingers, I'm not trying to break any laws. Is it a law that I am not allowed to put that net there? Because the judge had told me after the appropriate date I could return it to the location it was at.
And you know, I really don't want to get in a back and forth with you about it,
'Cause
but
there actually
what
is
I would tell
photos
you
of the area,
is
on-
in Mayor, the gentleman was not fined for having a basketball net on the wrong street. He was fined for not removing it after he was told to remove it
I only
because
did
it
that
was
so
after
that,
the date. And
Only to talk to the judge, because I wanted to find out the appropriate.
All right, Mr. Chuniatsky, what is, or Mr. Bongiovanni, I know we have some sort of an ordinance. Mr. Malave at the time, in fact, championed this about concerns because kids were playing in the street and there was quite a bit of discussion about it. What do we have on the books now with respect to basketball devices in the street?
I know there is an ordinance that obviously the gentleman was summoned for the violation, and I assume it applies equally to these portable, because yours was portable, as it would to one that I remember the ones that they used to have on the block I used to live in when I was a young man here and boy here. A metal pole stuck in the curb of the street. So all those things are covered by this ordinance. I agree with Mr. Chernitsky that I think this is just not the right forum to try to resolve this matter. And if the judge has told you to come back with the same thing that you got cited for in the past, then I don't really understand that ruling.
Yeah, like I said, the judge had said you could return it after the appropriate date. That's why I was questioning Mr. Howell saying to move it again.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the best course of action at this point, and Mr. Howell raises a number of very good points, is that this is probably not the best place to resolve this from a dispute resolution perspective. I think it's clear that we do have an ordinance that you're not supposed to have kids playing in the street. I appreciate the potential distinction between, is it a double sidewalk, is it a street? My suggestion might be that, in fact, Mr. Chernetsky, that we get Mr. Davis the information about the sort of voluntary mediation process that the township actually has, and see if there isn't a way that it could be amicably resolved that way, since there is some ambiguity about, is it in the street, is it not in the street, is it on a sidewalk? We don't want to certainly be in the middle of disputes with neighbors.
And I don't want to cause any disputes with the neighbors. I just want the kids to play, that's all.
But you raise a good point, and I think really the best and fairest way to resolve it would be to have it through that mediation resolution, because I think the law is clear that it can't be in the street.
Well, the only part of the law that deals with it has to do with, I think, public service, like dates where you can't have them out there. But I'm not sure that we regulate it, because it's not something we would endorse as being a valid activity on a public street.
Okay. I think, Mr. Davis, the answer, the explanation is that there are certainly times when, because of the weather, we have to plow, that everything has to be taken off the street. And that's obviously not in question. But I think, is it safe to say, can these be in the street, Mr. Bongiovanni?
Yes.
Yeah, but not from November 30th to March 31st.
All right. And so really, I guess the issue is where it's been located. It would appear as if you could put it there now, and then you get into the same situation you've had where the neighbors who live right there don't want the kids playing by their house.
We've heard that they were basically appeasing the neighbors. They kept calling and calling, and I understand that. Nobody wants to keep hearing that. But I just wanted to know if we were able to leave it up.
It would appear as if you. It would appear as if you can.
That's why. That's what the judge was saying. After March 31st, basically.
You could put it back out. Okay.
Mayor, just
go right ahead, Mr. Howell.
Nobody's questioning whether you can put a basketball net in the street from March 30th till December, whatever. I think what people in the block behind you are questioning, why are you putting it on my street and not on your own street?
Because it's
It's
a dead-end cul-de-sac.
Why are you not putting it in your own driveway? Why should your children and all their friends come and play in front of my house instead of your house? That's where the question is. You're not even putting it down the block from your house. By the same token, you are saying then that some kid that wants to come and work on the stereo system of his car has every right to come and do it in front of your house. You wouldn't appreciate it. I'm sure you wouldn't. If some kids wanted to set up a skateboard ramp in front of your house, you wouldn't appreciate it. I know I wouldn't appreciate it. I'm sure you wouldn't appreciate it. I tell them go do it in front of your own house.
Two of the homes in the cul-de-sac we're talking about, their kids do play there. It's the two adjacent neighbors that don't have kids.
Right, well,
Then have them put it in front of their
I think
house.
Mr. Howell raises a good point, and as neighbors, we can all appreciate it. I understand your concern. It's an area that is sort of isolated. I honestly think the best resolution, a very brief story. A couple of years ago, Mrs. Showmaker will recall, we had a dispute among neighbors over a dog barking incident. And it engulfed this chamber for 6 months. And it was a dispute between two neighbors who were well-intentioned, and it became an overwhelming issue for us to grapple with. We are not the body to resolve those kinds of issues. So what I would suggest is perhaps all the people that are involved who have raised concerns, maybe there's some amicable agreement around times, locations, maybe it should be moved.
Would a petition help of any kind of the people who do use the area?
Not to bring it to
Mayor,
us,
we're-
not to bring it here, because we don't have any statutory authority.
Mayor, we're
What I would
approaching
say
about 10
is-
minutes.
Okay,
and,
what I would say is get in touch with the manager's office, and we can get you all the information about the alternate dispute resolution process, and that really is the more appropriate forum in which to do this.
Okay, thank you
Right?
for all the time.
Mayor, I would just ask that until that process occurs, that we leave things, or ask Mr. Davis to leave the basketball net off of Orchard Court, go through the mediation process, settle it so that we're not all being inundated with emails and phone calls.
Okay. All right, we're going to close the public portion. I'm sorry. You want to come on up? Sure.
Sir, do you want your part of your ordinance back?
I want him to stay here.
Mr. Wisner, good evening, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Carl Wisner, 376 Conover Street, Howell, New Jersey. We'll be quick. I want to thank you personally for something tonight, Mayor DeBello. I was cruising the internet a couple of weeks ago, and I was going to bring this up at the last meeting I attended, but I didn't get a chance to. I found this letter. I think it might have been on the Howell webpage, but I'm not really sure where now. But anyway, it's on Howell Township letterhead, and it's from you, dated November 14th, to Senator Robert W. Singer. And the purpose of the memo is talking about affordable housing policies. And in it, to quote you, you say, "Candidly, this secret process is completely unacceptable and in my view totally contradicts the open public process supported by us all. It has been explained to me by our council that with state legislation, we can change this secret process. Accordingly, I'd respectfully request that you sponsor a law that requires all COA negotiations to be done at public meetings out in the open for the voting public to see." Now, I know at quite a few meetings I brought up this issue and was very unhappy with some COA hearings that were conducted, in my mind, were in secret. So when I saw this, I was like, wow. So then it apparently led to, directly, after you wrote to Senator Singer, to Robert W. Singer, Senator, and Ronald L. Rice, Senator, co-sponsoring a bill called Senate Number 2566, State of New Jersey, dated February 26, 2007. And basically, really short, the bill requires that COA hearings be publicized 30 days in advance, that the public be allowed to attend, and furthermore, that there be transcripts of the trials that the public has access to. That's pretty open from where they are now. So I really want to thank you a lot. You responded to comments and things, and this is above and beyond. I don't know if it's been passed. I certainly hope it does, but I want to sincerely thank you.
Thank you for your comments. You'll be pleased to know the council was kind enough to pass a resolution that we are sending to the Senate President, encouraging to pass this law.
Great.
So thank you, Mr. Wisner. All right, we're going to close the public portion. There were a few items that I think members of the council wanted to comment on. I'll just review them, at least according to my notes. And if anyone would like to make a comment, we can briefly do so now. The VFW building, the adult bookstore, the issues Mr. Maggot raised, and Mrs. Dixell's comment on the C1 designation. Perhaps we can comment briefly on the last. Does the council agree that we might like to write again to Senator Singer and Assembly members Malone and Dancer, encouraging them to sponsor whatever regulatory measures are necessary to extend the designation of the C1? I know we've done this in the past. Does anyone have a comment or concern with that?
I would like to put us on the record.
Okay. Mr. Howell, you agree as well?
Absolutely.
Mr. Chernetsky, would you mind?
If I could just offer one part of the,
Please.
The conversation. I think it's important to bear in mind that I think parts of that cut through the Route 9.
Would you just pull the mic a little closer?
Part of that, if we were to designate that, just so you're aware of what you're requesting, would cut through Route 9. And that's a vital commercial hub
Okay.
for the community. And
point.
perhaps you would like a little more study of the matter.
Perhaps what you can do, if the council agrees, is maybe just give us a brief write-up. Just get Mrs. Dixell, please. There's nothing the matter with this man. He's a fantastic manager. what I think maybe you could do for us prior to that is just give us a quick memo telling us the areas that would be impacted. And then we can make an informed decision about which ones we may selectively want to encourage the senator and the assembly persons to work to get the designation changed.
I have a comment, Mayor.
Everybody agree with that? Do you have a comment on that?
I have a comment. I think what we should do is we should find out why that area wasn't designated. We need a little more information because they did an informed study on when they were doing the C1 designations. So why don't we find out for what reasons those areas were not designated and work from that perspective?
That's a good point. We agree with that as a starting point?
I agree.
Okay.
I would like to get after it. I agree with Mr. Dixon on this. I mean, that's our drinking water. I mean, we got to watch it. Over money, I don't think we can. We're using up all our natural resources, and I understand that there's a balance here in life. But how could one part of it be a C1, another part be a C1, and the part in the middle not be? I mean, something don't add up there. I mean, I still haven't gotten over that. I had no electric for 2.5 days, and Councilwoman Showmaker up the block had electric, and the first part of my block had electric. I still haven't gotten over that. Okay? I mean,
it's not my.
I don't, whatever rhyme or reason, how could it be good? If water comes from one area, ends up in another area in the middle part, isn't designated the same, something's not right there.
It's not my intention to tell you what policies to pursue, but to make sure the decisions you make are take all options into consideration.
Well, I think everyone agreed with Mrs. Showmaker. Let's hear the rationale to the deputy mayor's point about why. Why did they designate the areas they did? Why did they designate the areas they did not? And then let's go from there and look at it with some more informed information.
If I could just interject one thing, as far as this issue is concerned, I mean, the question was asked right when the designations came out and only a portion of the Manasquan was. There are several watershed groups in the area, Manasquan Watershed Authority, that we have and several adjacent to us. They have raised that question from the get-go, and it actually is it's under consideration. It has been ever since the original designation has come up. Unfortunately, I did try to get on their website, and it's interestingly due to a rule proposal. It's currently under repair, so I can't give any more information than that.
Well, how many years has that been, Mr. Yata? 30 years, 40 years have been under consideration?
No,
I'm
since
just
like
asking.
2004.
Be a little facetious here. On that note, though, I did ask the manager about, I saw Chris Smith, something was approved with $1 million to clean up these streams in the immediate area.
Yes.
Did you look into that, sir?
Yes, we requested the concept plans and design drawings so we know specifically where the improvements are going to be, and that's coming to us.
Okay. Yeah, I read that in the paper that Assemblyman Chris Smith was behind. What was it, a bill that he got approved, or a grant? Or
It was a bill,
It was
an
a bill
appropriation.
For $1 million to clean up some of the streams, and some of them right here in Howell. And I asked the manager to follow up on that.
All right, the other two items I think that we may want to comment on, I think two of them, the adult bookstore issue, and I'm just going to make a brief comment, and Mr. Chinesky and or Mr. Bongiovanni or anyone can correct this, but I don't know that we have, in spite of the fact that we might like to, I don't know that we have any legal or statutory grounds to go to any of the current business owners, other than we could voluntarily ask them to, and insist that they, in spite of the fact that we would like to, and that we agree with everything Mr. Volpe said, we can't go to any of these existing places and tell them to change the way they do business. Is that a fair statement?
Well, this ordinance does not try to address that, and I think while we haven't exhausted all legal research in this regard, I thought the approach we're taking is to try to prevent this from happening in the future. I know that it would be a lot more difficult legally to, by ordinance, to simply say to the existing stores, well, you're out of business. It just doesn't work that way.
Too cool.
Now, there are lots of other different remedies in terms of maybe disclosures that have to be made by landlords of commercial properties or something like that that might protect tenants in the future. Also, that could be considered, because it seems wrong that a tenant could you know, move into a place and not know that this could come in 2 or 3, you know, units down. Or
Mhm. Did you have a comment, Mrs. Showmaker?
2 questions. My head started to spin when I heard that gentleman say about grandfathering. There is no such thing, once that business goes out, there is no such thing as grandfathering for that same type of business to go in there, so.
I don't know why, I wanted to ask him.
Yeah,
Mr. Volpe.
Mr. Volpe, Mr.
I wanted to
Volpe.
ask him when that other business went out of business, and I don't know why, you know, why.
But we do not, that is not grandfathered, that is not a business that is grandfathered.
Did they go to the town and get approval for this, or they just moved in?
It's,
Well, that's the little bit of a gray area when it comes to issuing COs in commercial buildings in Howell and similar communities. I don't think there's anything in the ordinance that says this is not a permitted use, and therefore they just have to meet certain health and safety standards in terms of passing CO requirements, and that's all they have to do.
Mr. Bongiovanni
Being grandfathers.
can correct me if I'm wrong, but under a person's Bill of Rights, the reason that we needed this ordinance and we need to get this on the book is that we need to make enough layers of protection for our areas where it's permitted, because you cannot not permit it. That if you have so many layers of protection, and one of the things that I don't see in here, and I keep going through this, is I'm from Pittsburgh. All those the places all there, they had no windows. So why can't we have in our ordinance that such an establishment cannot have windows, or the windows need to be blacked or painted? But because, and I will remember when we first moved here, my husband worked in Maple Shade, and we used to go past an area, and they had the windows all painted black. I remember my son saying, "What are all those women hanging in the window for?" Because they had all their windows painted black. So you knew what the establishment was. They had silhouettes of women painted on the window. So, I mean, there's certain areas where their establishments are required to have no windows. I mean, this is something that we may want to also put in our ordinance at a later time, that such establishments have no windows, or the windows have to be completely blacked out.
How'd you explain that one to your son?
I said to him, "Ask your daddy."
Okay. All right. But, Mr. Bond, can we, we'll get to you, Mr. Volpe, we'll talk to you offline. Is there anything we can do from a regulatory perspective on any of these existing locations?
Mayor, last week, Councilman Howell had a suggestion, and it's not part of this ordinance because we're not gearing it towards any specific business. It's just an approach we want to take to the highway corridor, and I think it's best left at that at this point.
Okay. Okay, so it's being looked at. Okay.
I agree with Mr. Volpe, though. Personally, my daughter talked me to go and get a manicure and a pedicure because I'm that kind of guy with the, and I said, "Honey, you're going to take pictures of your daddy's car." Okay? It was one of the concerns that bothered me. You're going to take pictures of your daddy's car here. That's where my wife and my daughter go to get their nails done all the time. And they were walking across from McDonald's. Okay? So it concerned me. I did get the manicure and pedicure. Just one time I told her I'd do it for her.
Mayor?
I'm sorry.
May I,
Hold on. I just can't imagine those Fred Flintstone-looking feet with nail polish on them.
Mayor?
Yes,
May I just, so Mr. Volpe doesn't feel as if we're talking in riddles here. There are certain, there were certain recommendations that would advance some of the things you wanted to see. However, they could be incorporated into other ordinances. So it's not as if we're targeting a specific industry, and therefore it becomes more challengeable. So we're going about this very methodically. And our first step here, to make it clean, our first clean step we're taking here is this, I guess, I don't know if to say stop the bleeding or pick some low-hanging fruit, but essentially not allow any more to come in.
Okay. And then, thank you. And I think the last item, just being conscious of the time, was the VFW American Legion building situation. And I just had one general question, comment, or observation. Can't we, in the interim, Mr. Chernetsky, allow the VFW to use one of the township's facilities for a meeting place? I mean, the senior citizen building after 4:30 is empty and vacant, and there's a large meeting room when they don't have other events. There's a large meeting room upstairs. I can't imagine that we couldn't allow the VFW to use,
Mayor, frankly,
or Echo Lake.
They can have my office. I mean, I'll work here. I truly feel for them. I think part of their frustration is they have educational materials, they have forms for returning veterans, they have workshops that they put on for children where they have coloring books and pins and those sort of things. And part of the frustration is there's no place to put that stuff. And we all know that, look, we're you know, at a premium here for room ourselves, but in terms of meeting space, that's something they could definitely have, and maybe we could look at something like a trailer for storage. There's a couple options we can look at in the interim.
Is that building, is it totally no possible way?
Just to remind council and the community what what council's offer was that once the OEM building was ready, and mind you, they moved out of there because it wasn't in good shape to begin with. But the offer was that the VFW could have it if they were to fix it up. And all we did was provided a cost estimate for what we think needed to be looked at should they want to take that project on. I don't know if, I guess they're indicating that they're not interested in taking on that expense at this point. But to answer your question, the building has significant problems.
But I think there's a separate issue, because there's a lot of things I'd like to do at my home, but I can't necessarily do all of them, but I still live in my home.
Yeah.
So are we suggesting that they could begin to occupy that facility, but they'd have to understand what the investments may be long-term?
It's not occupiable at this time. There are walls throughout the building that are literally, you know, soaked through, and there's mold in the attic, in a space right above the walls if you punch through it.
It's uninhabitable.
It's uninhabitable.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, can we, on an interim basis, reach out to Commander Novick, his peer on the American Legion side, and say, we want to find you a place to at least have meetings, whether it's, Deputy Mayor mentioned Echo Lake, I mentioned maybe upstairs of the senior citizen, but if they need a place to have regular meetings, we've got to be able, they shouldn't have to go to Farmingdale. I mean, we should have the ability to accommodate them having a regular monthly meeting. We all agree with that?
We need to do something more permanent for them
In the long
for
run,
the
we need a
future.
permanent solution, there's no
Yeah,
question.
you know, when we talk about a master plan and a pecking order, well, in my eyes, that's something that should be near the top. I don't know, we need to figure out something.
Well,
It's unfortunate, Mayor, if I may. It's unfortunate that the past council had that same sentiment as you yourself has, Deputy Walsh. Unfortunately, we were advised, and I don't point the blame anywhere, but we were maybe ill-advised, or we all, because of our heartfelt sentiment for the VFW, they jumped at that because that building was going to become available without truly knowing what the building was like. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for those that sat here thinking that it was going to come to fruition. On the other hand, we have to think that we have fiduciary responsibilities. And if you guys think that somewhere you can find in your heart to do that $150,000 renovations to that building, then there you go. But you have to we were in the same exact position when that decision was made as we are right now, so that you know how this all came about.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back, at the time this was recommended to us, because we wouldn't have thought OEM building, and I'm not going to use specific names either, but there was no representation that the damage was that significant. It was, once OEM moves out, there'll need to be some certain updates and renovations to that building, but it was never disclosed that they were this material. We were
understand.
excited that they could begin to use the OEM building. And now the discovery that this is so horribly inhabited, it's mind-boggling. Because it couldn't have gotten like this overnight. OEM was using it. So I don't understand how it wasn't disclosed while it was being used, that we had these enormous problems. Because overnight, in a year, it didn't become like this. Doesn't seem possible. This has to have been happening for a while, and that's really my concern. But that's, that's former history. Can we at least in the interim try and help find a place for these organizations to meet somewhere on township property?
We'll do our best.
Okay. And then I think we have to, at some point, figure out what's the long-range plan? How can we help?
We need to address this and find an alternative.
All right, I think those were the only items that,
Mayor,
from
if I
the
may.
public. You had something else?
Yes, I absolutely,
Please go
if you
ahead.
all, I'd like to address Mr. Maggot and his, your water issue. Mr. Maggot, I've sat here through the course of the months and listened to you very diligently, but I have to tell you that tonight, it kind of struck a sore spot on me when you said that we've been negligent and that we've ignored the issue. I don't think that anyone has ever been negligent on this particular issue. I will tell you that we have, in the past, cleaned the waterways, but there was a process that we had to go through. I will also tell you that I believe that we were going to, I don't want to use the word circumvent the process, but try to go around certain steps that we needed to try to rectify that particular area. I will further tell you that in my business, I speak to a lot of customers who have gone through the nor'easter this past weekend, people that never ever had water for 25 years in their home, and yet had their basements flooded up to 2 feet where it came right through the floor of their basement. I also will tell you that I was so concerned about your area. Mr. Schernicki will tell you, I called his cell phone. I kept going to your area because I thought if this is an area that would ever have been flooded at this time, that would have been the time. I went past constantly through the course of the day. Every day I went past to see that water. I called him and I said to him, please, if you can do something for me, please go over there and take pictures, because if this is at any time this is going to flood, I will tell you this is the time, because I have talked to people that have never had flooding in 25, 30 years that have had it. So I will tell you that I feel fairly comfortable stating that when this past storm that it didn't flood, I cannot tell you the comfort level that I had, because you have made me extremely on edge with your tone when you use the word negligent, because I don't think anyone has been negligent, especially this. First of all, we set policy. I'm going to tell you, Mr. Maggot, I'm not going to address your issue anymore. Thank you.
Yeah, the only other comment, Mrs. Showmaker raises a good point. I spoke with Ron Sanasak, our emergency management director, twice that day. I bothered Mr. Chernetsky at home and asked for, we must have spoke 3 or 4 times, and I was getting updates throughout the day of the conditions of the township at large, but notably the area where you are, because of our repeated concerns. So Mrs. Showmaker is on point.
One more.
If I could, and Mrs. Showmaker, I had exactly the same concerns as you. My wife and I got in my truck, and I drove out to, and I parked at Mr. Maggot's house and walked down to the stream. As I was pulling in there, a Howell police car was coming out, so he was checking the area. As I was pulling out of Moore's Landing, Ron Sanizak passed me going in and checking it. So I turned around and I followed him back there. I can tell you he was there at least a dozen times Sunday from noon till midnight. And we were in that entire area. At no time, I believe, was the water within 2 feet of cresting from the river and going into that detention basin. The river widened in the back by Burgerville Road. You know, it literally wiped out that horseshoe that's there, but at no point in time did it even come close. I mean, the storm drains, the water wasn't even at the top of the storm drains in the street. And, you know, I think we just need to let Mr. Nunziato go about the way he's got to go about taking care of things, and that's it.
One last comment, and I speak as a parent, because that's what I do most of the time, parenting. A lot of times, our children, don't understand why we do the things the way we do them. It's unfortunate now that Mr. Nunziato is going to have to go through a long and expensive process to do something that I think that we as a community were hoping we were going to be able to do in a different fashion. It is going to be long, it's going to be expensive, and it may not come to fruition for some time. But I will tell you this, as a seated councilwoman, I feel much more comfortable sitting here after that nor'easter and watching where the water came than I did the week prior. End of comment, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
I do have another comment on another issue.
Something else, go ahead. And we'll get
I
to
would
Hold on
just...
one second. Is it on this issue?
Yeah, I personally didn't go by 89 Mariners Cove because I got phone calls that Councilwoman Schomaker, Councilman Howell, and Mayor DeBella were in the area. So
What else do you have, Mrs.
I just would like a letter sent, a packet actually sent to Mr. Davis at 39 Pine Needle Street with our ordinance 265-2, a copy of the ordinance 265-2, and the mediation process that we have. I think he needs to have both of those, and let him up to interpretation. That's not, after the dog ward issue, I don't think it belongs here.
Agreed. All right, I'm going to call the council's attention back to 8A1. This is the public hearing on ordinances. You want to take a break? All right. We're going to take a 5-minute meeting. I would ask that everyone please retake your seats, or if you need to, take any conversations out into the hallway, please. Mrs. Smith? All right, I'm going to call the council's attention to 8A1. We're now going to move into public hearings. This is the first. Accordingly, ordinance 00710, introduced and passed on first reading on 3/2007, and published according to law, is now being taken upon further consideration in a public hearing. Affidavit of the publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 3/2307 is submitted, and is noted that a copy of the ordinance was posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and the copies were available to the general public upon request. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 188 Land Use to establish the HD3 zoning districts and to provide standards for development of age-restricted housing development within a mixed-use setting as recommended by the Master Plan Reexamination Report.
Okay, I'm going to open up the meeting to the members of the general public. Anyone who'd like to make comments for or against specific to this proposed ordinance, please come forward. Mr. Magid, we're going to, ladies first. Mrs. Dix will beat you to the punch, and we'll come back to you. Come on up, Mrs. Dixell.
I would relinquish it and then...
You're a true gentleman.
Not really, but...
Hello again, Mrs. Dixell.
Could you please tell me, Barbara Dixell, Howell Township, could you please tell me where age-restricted housing is permitted and in mixed use, and where are they going to, what kind of zone is this going to be, and where is it going to be?
Okay. Well, this will be an HD3 zone, which is a new zone.
Okay, where?
It'll need to be in highway areas, and I believe, based on all of the different requirements of land and what have you, there's only a handful of locations. Mr. Janetsky, can you further illustrate that?
Mayor, you're correct in that the Master Plan Subcommittee had recommended various locations. But the way we're approaching this is we're creating a policy, we're putting it in place, and so the ordinance is designed as a policy that would establish that type of use. And then what we're doing is we're going through the zoning map And we're only making changes in small areas at a time so we can have a complete discussion on a manageable area. So for the time being, and this will be one of the ordinances we adopt tonight, that map in front of you, Ms. Dixell, you see the orange area, the areas in red?
Yeah.
Okay, you see the area in red on the right side?
Yeah.
That would be the only area where that
Okay,
ordinance
since
would affect.
I'm not a map reader. You have to tell me where it is.
Okay, that's on Route 33.
On Route 33. And where? Is it down near
It
Colts
would
Neck
be,
Crossing?
it would be a little past Colts Neck Crossing on the same side as Farmer Brown's.
Is it down near Collingswood, down that way?
It is approaching that way. It is on the same side as Farmer Brown's. I believe it's in the area where the boarded-up swing time golf course or miniature golf course, or I should say it's a driving range, is. It is in that area, is my recollection.
Yeah, Mayor, but I believe it was called the Howell Golf Academy or something.
There you go. Yeah.
Is that wet?
Is it wet?
This is an ordinance that we're creating.
I don't know that we're in a position to talk about, whether or not it's
because if it's
wet.
wetland,
Mayor,
and
if
you're
I can...
proposing to do that, and they decide to go build something, are they gonna go fill in wetlands?
Yeah, first of all, this ordinance creates a potential zone. Any of the other requirements with respect to wetlands, other restrictions, other regulatory agencies, this doesn't change that.
In other words, when you did this, they didn't look into these other things to see if the area is like a designated wetlands and, they didn't do this?
Mayor?
Go ahead,
Mayor.
Mr. Chernitsky.
Again, what we're doing is we're creating a HD3 as a policy, so it's like on a bookshelf, and then for the first phase of the mapping, we're inserting it someplace. But those areas, whether there's wetlands, what the buffers are, those sort of issues, that's the responsibility of the applicant to any sort of planning board or a zoning board, and the professionals at those boards to review and to make sure that they comply with all those laws and regulations. So so the council's responsibility is to enact the master plan in terms of the ordinances and the mapping. And it wouldn't get to that level of analysis at this stage.
okay,
Ms. Dixell, if I could say something as well. This is an ordinance attempting to make our ordinances consistent with the re-examination report of the master plan. Presumably, the planning board, which worked on this re-examination for many years, well, not many years, but I'd say a few years, they have access to the basic township planning documents, which is the 1994 master plan and as amended in 1995. And those contain all sorts of helpful maps about where the township finds suitable soils for development, suitable areas for development. And wetlands is always considered. So I think that there would have to be some consideration by the planning board in making, if they refer to any areas where this would be suitable, that at least has been looked at. And as Mr. Chernitsky mentions, they would have to comply if there's any person who ever gets, seeks zoning approvals, they're not going to be allowed to fill in wetlands, and they're going to have to build, around the wetlands and stay out of the wetlands.
What other questions do you have, Mrs. Dixell?
Okay, now, you're changing the uses in this, correct? There's gonna be, you're adding new uses.
It's a new zone, so we're not changing any uses. It's an entirely new zone that doesn't exist at all today.
Okay,
So
so
all
then
of the uses are new as a part of this new zone.
The new uses, okay, the people that live in these areas, I keep saying this, have you noticed them? The people that live in the areas where this is going to change.
Mayor, if I may.
Go right ahead.
Barbara, I think you're missing the point here. This is an ordinance. We're creating the verbal ordinance. We're not citing a specific area. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Bongiovanni.
You said Route 33.
There is a specific mapping, which is also part of is it the same ordinance or another one?
Yes,
It's another one.
but what the councilwoman, I think, is saying, for example, this requires a particular minimum area.
Correct.
Well, you could take that minimum area in that red area and put it in a couple different configurations.
All right, thank you.
So we don't know.
Anything else, Mrs. Dixell?
No, thanks.
Okay. Mr. Magid, come on up, sir. Questions on 8A1 or comments?
Hey, Maggot, 89 Meredith Cove. I'm just going to mention a few pages, and each time, a short comment from you will be fine, because I'll be very short. Page 3. A and purpose. It uses the language for age-restricted mixed-use development. I'm going to read the rest of it. I take that to mean that's age-restricted, and mixed-use, I take it to mean it can be townhouses, duplexes, etc. Is that correct? Is that what you mean by mixed-use? Different types of units?
No, what that was referring to, very briefly, is that it can be a mix of both residential and commercial kinds of industry.
Okay, residential. Okay, fine. Now I call your attention to page 5. Page 5 on part 3, permitted principal uses. A, the age-restricted houses not exceeding 4 units per acre. Okay. An age-restricted development shall not exceed 200 dwelling units. I'll quickly go to D, attached townhouses, duplexes, and triplexes. Triplexes, from my understanding, is the units will be at 3 levels. Is that correct?
No, it's not actually. That's
No?
not correct.
What's
We
a
have
triplex?
limitation.
It would sort of, if you could imagine, sort of like three townhomes next to each other.
All
similar
right,
to
so
that.
what you're saying is,
3 connected
by,
units.
by this language, is it specific enough so you could not have 2 units, meaning one over the other, or 3 units, one over the other, would have to be 1 unit, whether you call it a duplex, triplex, and so on. Is that what you're saying?
Correct, and plus there are other height restrictions
No,
that
I
would
just-
apply.
No, I'm
So-
going to get to other pages. But specifically, is that therefore in concert with the Part A, which says, whether it's a townhouse, duplex, or a triplex, meaning somebody has a townhouse of 3 floors, I understand, it'll never exceed 4 units per acre. Is that so?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, okay. And the last part, E, it says, single family for owner occupancy. I notice it doesn't say anything about owner occupancy of the others. Does that mean they could be rented? It could be rented.
They could be, so long as they're age restricted. As long as they.
Age restricted. I understand. Okay. So all the others except single family could be rented. Okay?
That's correct.
Very largely rented, duplexes, triplexes, and so on. Okay. Now I want to go, just a quick oddity. On page 6, the first paragraph, I don't know if it has very lot of meaning. It says you can have somebody under 19 years of age for 8 weeks during a 12-week period. Well, you could have one person come in for 8 weeks, who's, 16 or whatever, and then another person come in. It doesn't simply say, it's okay, but there's no restriction on the number of times that can be repeated, as long as each one comes in for 8 weeks. Isn't that so?
Yes.
Right?
You may have more than
Okay.
one grandchild.
Now, I don't care what I have. I'm just saying, by this language. Okay, yeah, in other words, what you're saying, you could have 3 at a time, but that's not what I'm saying. They can only stay 8 weeks, but somebody comes in for 8 weeks, goodbye, another one for 8 weeks, no. Okay, I just want to see the language, okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. And page 7, which maybe ties back to the previous page 5, in page 7, under F. And again, when you say mixed use, you've explained it, it's both, you can only have age restricted, you can't have anybody, that's not qualified for age restricted, and also, you're talking about commercial. Those are the 2 parameters, commercial, and as far as residential, would be age restricted, am I right?
You are right.
Okay. Now, I go to part C here, and I guess I checked, because it seems to me F is simply a complete rendition, that is, part B and C of part F, is simply it seems to me saying the same thing as page 3, I'm sorry, page 5, part 3. Is there something more, a little? Well, there is one item here, something about section E8, but are you saying that F of page 7 is really in simple conformity with part 3 on page 5? Or is there any real reason for any kind of a difference there? Am I missing something?
No, Mayor.
Go right ahead, Mr. Schnitt.
F provides the design requrequents for such a development.
Okay, just the design.
Yeah.
But in terms of the types of units, it's the same thing.
Right.
Okay. Now, the reason I was asking, and I'm rather pleased for the moment, is I think what you're saying is, since it's 4 units per acre, duplex, triplex, it looks to me like it's not an insignificant rateable, because each time you'd get an insignificant rateable, and for 8 units of any kind, affordable housing comes in, this looks pretty good. Have I fully understood what's said here?
I think you understand it.
4 units per acre, no matter how you divide it up.
That is correct.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anyone else who'd like to be heard on this proposed ordinance? Mr. Costigan, come on up, sir.
Mayor, if I may add one thing while Mr. Costigan comes. There's a link to, depending on how many units you have to provide so much square footage of commercial space and so much square footage of open space and so it's like an accordion or like a telescope.
Good evening, Mr. Costigan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for allowing me to speak. And I want to thank you and the manager, the Council, Mayor, Council Manager, for little bites. This is good, because you remember when we were looking through the whole, everything all over the place on the map of Township, it's very, very difficult to concentrate. I just have one little comment. I'm looking at the HD3 zones that we have on the map, and I see mixed use, age-restricted housing development, and my only problem is it goes back pretty deep. I see ARE4 up in the top, that's probably Colesneck Road. But the one problem I see is that these are all going to funnel into that horrible Route 33, Route 34 area by the Apollo Diner, where that's an accident waiting to happen. And we already have that Colesneck crossing in that same area, and that's going to be 500 plus or however many units we have there. I think we're condemning ourselves to a big glut for a long time until the state does something to straighten out that highway. So that was my only comment.
Okay.
And I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costigan. Anyone else who'd like to be heard for or against this ordinance, please come forward. Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, just in regards to
if you could just
swearing, yes.
You and swear in, just give us your name and address for the record.
Sure. Alex Pavlovsky, 14 Nicole Court.
We just need you to try and talk into the mic so we can get you on the recorder.
Sure, okay.
Make yourself comfortable.
Yeah, in regards to what Mr. Costigan was saying, actually, in addition to that, what are some of the road improvements that are planned for that area over there by 33? I mean, currently it's a one-lane road in both directions. I think there's a blinking light there, but I don't believe there's any kind of traffic signal at this time.
There is a planned traffic light that will be at the intersection of Colts Neck and 33. So that will become a traffic light.
Anything else besides that?
I believe there may be some other minor site improvements that are coming with Colts Neck Crossing, but I'm not familiar with what the details are.
I thought they were doing. I thought they were doing some 3 lanes. Some areas where they're going to do some 3 lanes on there.
We can look further, Mayor.
Not full 3 lanes, but I thought they were going to be turning lane. I thought.
Mrs. Showmaker, that was brought up at the planning board meeting this past Thursday, I believe. And what we were told at that time was that the county, if the county requires that it be widened, that the county would actually have to condemn the property and take it from the residents. And the planning board sent a very clear message to, and we just got a letter, I don't know if you received a copy of it from Mr. Cachero, where we told the county if the county deems that the taking of people's property for those road improvements is necessary, then we want no part of it. You know, they better find a different way to do it, because the residents didn't want to sell the property. You know, for whatever reason, they didn't want the county coming in and buying the property. So I think that's it's kind of at a crossroads now, because I would have to ask the manager or our engineer, if the county says, well, we would have to take that property to widen the road, and we don't want to allow that to happen, can we then force Colt Neck Crossing to come back with an amended site plan because they don't have the road improvements that they were told they were going to need? And maybe have Colt Neck Crossing come back with a very amended site plan.
That's why we have a master plan. That is,
Any other
that's why
questions
this
or comments
is
you
so
have?
important.
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else who'd like to be heard on this particular ordinance? All right, seeing no one else has come forward, I'm going to close the public portion and
Motion that ordinance number 0-07-10 be finally passed and adopted, and that notice of its passage and adoption be published in the 42707 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
okay, we have a motion, we do need a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any final comments from the council? Any final comments? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, next is 882, ordinance number 007-14, introduced and passed on first reading on 3/20/07 and published according to law, is now being taken upon further consideration in public hearing. Affidavit of the publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 3/23/07 is submitted, and it is noted that a copy of the ordinance was posted on the bulletin board at the municipal building, and that copies were available to the general public upon request. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 188 Land Use to make various modifications to the township zoning map by the Master Plan Reexamination Report.
Okay, I'm going to open the meeting at this time. Members of the general public, anyone who would like to be heard for or against this particular ordinance, please come forward. Anyone who'd like to be heard, please come forward. Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public portion, ask a member of the council to proceed.
Motion that, go on.
Motion in ordinance number 0-07-14 be finally passed and adopted, and notice of its passage and adoption be published in the 42707 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
Okay, we have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
Any final remarks from the council? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
This is the map. This is what we're voting on now.
Yes, that's the map.
Yes. Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, 883, ordinance number 00716, introduced and passed on first reading on 3/20/07 and published according to law, is now being taken upon further consideration in a public hearing. An affidavit of the publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 3/23/07 is submitted, and it is noted that a copy of the ordinance was posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building, and the copies were available to the general public upon request. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
Capital Ordinance supplementing Ordinance Number 0-99-17, finally adopted on May 17, 1999, which provided for construction and improvements to buildings in order to appropriate an additional $20,000, therefore for a total appropriation of $196,125, and to expand the scope of improvements to include the acquisition of an ambulance authorized in and by the Township of Howell in the County of Monmouth, New Jersey.
Okay, I'm going to open up the meeting to members of the general public for a hearing on this particular ordinance. Anyone would like to be heard for or against, please come forward. Good evening, sir. Go right ahead. Oh, you're not, I'm sorry, sir. I thought you were coming up to speak. All right. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard, either for or against this, before the council takes comments? Okay, seeing no one, we're going to close the public portion. Comments from the council, Mr. Howell?
Mayor, I have a question. In section 2, it says that this pole barn was for Ramtown First Aid Squad.
Yeah, I think there's a mistake.
No, that ordinance, the original ordinance authorized 2. It had other things authorized
two.
in it.
One of them was Kent Road and the other was Ramtown?
Yes.
Ms. Dalton, go ahead.
I just want to comment on this because I think it's important for the public to understand that this is an ordinance from 1999. This is capital funds that have been sitting around for 8 years unexpended and unencumbered.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we are appropriating $20,000 from that appropriation now to assist in the funding of the new ambulance that we are buying for,
Actually not.
no? Okay.
We are taking an original, there were 2 pole barns authorized. We're taking, everything has been spent except for the 1 pole barn for Howell First Aid.
Correct.
Everything else in that ordinance has been spent. They are taking the $120,000 to set aside for Howell's pole barn that never got built, and they've abandoned the project. We are adding $20,000 to it from our capital surplus to provide for a $140,000 ambulance. That is what we are doing.
So they are not getting their pole barn built.
No, they have abandoned that project several years back.
Well, let me just give a couple of minutes of clarification on this. Originally, back in 1999, I think before any one of us were up here, the Township Council agreed to build a pole barn on the Holsis Corner Road property for the Kent Road First Aid Squad. Apparently, there were site improvement complications with that property, and it became impractical to put the building there. The Kent Road First Aid Squad, at that time, asked the municipality if they would hold those dollars until they could identify an alternate location or determine what else they could do with those funds. And apparently, there was agreement back then to continue to do that. Here is where there is some concern on the part of the First Aid Squad. They ultimately were hoping, and in fact contend that they were led to believe, that this 120, what is it, 125,000 or 120?
The original amount was 120.
They contend that the 120,000 was explained to them that if they didn't use it for the pole barn, they could use it for needed equipment. And apparently agreed to leave that in abeyance. They built the pole barn recently. In fact, it's pretty much finished. I mean, the structure is up, the pole barn is in, and they took a loan out to pay for that particular building. So they have a mortgage to pay down the cost of the pole barn. And they were hoping that these additional funds could be used to make up for the equipment that they need. And Deputy Mayor and I have been in some conversations with all the squads, and I think that particular squad covers between 75 to 80% of all of the calls in the township. So they're going through equipment and supplies at an enormous clip, and had hoped they could use this $125,000 for that. Well, when the issue came up about ambulances, and I won't get into the detail of what happened, but there's some disagreement about who was supposed to be next. It was determined that we agreed that Kent Road needed an ambulance as well, and that it was not practical to wait until next year, and that these additional funds here could actually be used with an additional 20 to get us to the approximate $145,000 that is typically the going rate for ambulances. And so as a result of that, we're taking the $125,000, which is already there, which has been held for them for a project, and adding to it $20,000 so we can get the ambulance. And I think that's what we're being asked to vote on here.
The only thing I have to add is the equipment list that was submitted to us when we did discuss equipment last year. Did not pass muster with bond council. They were not items that could be purchased through the capital program. So we were left with $120,000 uncommitted at that point in time.
Mayor, just one more point.
Go ahead, Mr. Chansky.
Put a finishing touch on the decision that in the budget every year, you provide for a new ambulance. And what we're doing by providing for it now, we're kind of accelerating it so they don't have to wait for that whole budget process to go through. So you won't see it in the 2007 capital budget.
And I guess the only, under comments, the only concern that the First Aid Squad members have at least relayed to me is that there is still some uneasiness about who was actually next in the queue to get an ambulance. And Councilman Howell and I talked about this topic today, just in general terms. And so I spoke with representative from the squad, and their contention is they still really believe, I happen to agree with them, that they really were the ones who were next in the queue to get the ambulance.
They are. They're slated for the 07. This just accelerates it faster than the budget process.
I don't disagree with you, but we're also appropriating funds to get an ambulance for Farmingdale, Howell, simultaneously.
That money was appropriated last year.
And that money was submitted 06.
06.
And I'm screwing up the years. The Kent Road Squad's contention is 06 should have been them. Okay, so be that as it may, the concern that has been at least elevated to me, and I know others have spoken to the First Aid Squad folks about it, is that the Kent Road Squad believes that they've been waiting to use that $125,000 for quite some time. And it was committed, and it was earmarked, and now that money is being used to get an ambulance that they believe legitimately they were entitled to get as a function of the municipal normal budgeting process. And so, for example, tonight they said to me, do you realize we had an estimate to get our parking lot paved? $100,000 to get the parking lot paved. And so I think their concern is they've been waiting and hoping for all these years to have this $120,000. Now they're finally ready to do something with it from a capital expense perspective, and it's gone. So I don't know that, I know that there is an answer to it, but it's a concern, particularly when they're covering 80% of the calls. So I guess I'm concerned that there isn't a way that this can be funded without them losing these funds.
The assignment that I received was how can we expedite,
of course,
the acquisition of the ambulance, and certainly this solves that case. If there's other needs for the First Aid Squad, whether it be old 1990, whatever it is, money, or whether it be 2007 money, that can be, we have not completed capital, it certainly can be adjusted or in the budget process. So then we can consider, do we authorize the ambulance, or do we leave that authorized? By the way, the ordinance only authorizes a pole barn, so we still have to amend it if you're going to authorize paving.
No question.
All right, so do we authorize the ambulance now and then look at any other needs during the budget process? I mean, that still is not cut in stone, and then we haven't finished the budget process as far as capital. I think that's the way to go. You can still have the conversation. We can get them to where they can order the ambulance now. I know there's 4 months to 6 month wait to get it, and still address any other capital needs during the budget process.
Mayor, let us think about what you talked about for next week.
Okay, all right. Any other comments on this particular ordinance? Okay, hearing none, I believe we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please. We are 8A3.
I don't have a motion and a second for 8A3.
No, I never got that.
Really?
Just a comment.
You sure?
Close the public hearing comment.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. We need a motion and a second.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion by Mrs. Showmaker. We need a second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Dalton. Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. 8A4, ordinance number 00713, introduced and passed on first reading on 2/2007 and published according to law, is now being taken upon further consideration in a public hearing. Affidavit of the publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 2/2407 is submitted, and it is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building and the copies were available to the general public upon request. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, County Monmouth, amending Chapter 188 Land Use Ordinance to provide for a new zoning district entitled Planning Mixed Use District and rezoning certain lands into the district.
Okay, at this time I'm going to open up the meeting. Members of the general public, anyone who'd like to be heard, making comments for or against this ordinance, please come forward. Mr. Magid?
A. Maggot, 89 Mariners Cove. I ask you first to look at the first page. In the first paragraph of the first page, it specifies on this 31-acre tract certain block and lot numbers. Okay. I ask you now to go down to the fourth paragraph, which says, this was because the Township Council entered into a settlement agreement with AST Sunnyside Road, LLC, dated 1/4/07. Now I ask you to go down to the last paragraph. And I will read to you the end of the second line and then the third and fourth. First, the need for the housing in the township to meet the diverse housing needs of aging population. You're relating here the word diverse housing to specify different types of aging population. All right, then you go on, by providing for a community for older persons and or persons with, and then it says or without, but I underline the part with children. The needs for those not yet eligible for age-restricting houses can be met. Now, this is an agreement that you entered into. So, I've now read to you the part that this definitely applies to not older people without children, but people of any age, but with children. But they're not as old as for senior citizens. And it says, the needs of those not yet eligible for age-restricted housing can be met. That's your effort here. Now, I ask you now to go to page 3. On page 3, it says the maximum number of dwellings will be 118, and the total amount of the tract is 31 acres, and last time I spoke, it was approximately divided in half. I won't kick the numbers back and forth. Maybe 15 for commercial, 16 for residential, 14, 17, some number like that. But that's what I was told, about half. Number 118, by the way, if I were to pick 16 acres as a number, approximately half of the 31, could be 15, could be 17, whatever, I come up with a minimum of 7 units per acre. Not anything like the previous one we talked about senior citizens, but these would appear to be smaller units because now we have 7 units, approximately 7 units per acre. Not anything like the 4 units per acre. So this would be less, obviously square footage, would be less of a rateable. I now go to page 5. On page 5, under item 5A, the maximum height is 3 stories inclusive of the garage level. Now, here, we're not talking, from what I can see, about 1 unit that would be 2 stories or 3 stories. From what I can see here, you could have 3 units, one on top of the other, or certainly 2 units, one on top of the other. Again, these smaller units for people with children. And, you could have 1 child. And I made a point that it costs at least $11,000 by the specification of our own superintendent, and that's, a cost just for a child, whatever other costs there are. What I'm saying is, the property taxes evolving from these, if they had 1, or certainly if they had 2 children, would never meet the taxes paid by these smaller units. And now I go on page 5, down on page 5, under 5 to part C. And it says, consistent with the intent of the district, homes to be designated principally to meet the specialized dwelling needs of older residents of smaller houses, commonly known as empty nesters. Now we have a total dichotomy. If that is our intention, as specified on page 5, we're certainly not doing on a scintilla of effort to head off anything like what I specified on page 1. The same smaller unit that you like to have for empty nesters is certainly available, and we haven't here allocated, so many senior citizens and so many younger people with families. If there's a need for it, it could fill up very greatly, from what I can see, in this agreement with younger couples with 1, 2 children, maybe even 3. Now, that's page 5. And lastly, I want to comment on page 6, and it says, and I had this point last time, even though it's 118 units, there's 18 affordable houses because of the commercial aspect. Now, this ordinance, which you are particularly applying because I was told had to go into that agreement. I don't know that I can accept that, but that's what you say. It seems to me that while this applies only for these block and lot numbers, well, surely somebody else could come along and start giving you the same treatment that you were given before. And it seems to me it'd be a little easier for them. And here we go. This is my bottom line. This is not like the previous one of senior citizens, large units, at 4 units per acre. These could be apartments, rented, of any. I don't see any stipulation here other than 118 units for, let's say, 16 acres, 7 units per acre. I don't see any stipulation on size, meaning rateable. Certainly, I don't see anything about ownership. It could be apartments. I may have used this language before, at reference to this. I'm going to use this again. This agreement that you made for the future, where we have to now bring in affordable housing, and I saw the sizes on those, 800 square feet, 1,000 square feet, 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, is a real recipe for disaster, because once this was agreed to, and if these people have needs, I'm not talking about senior citizens at all, could be empty nesters, could be families, 1 child, 2 child. It's a recipe for disaster, because if I were a builder and want to fill the needs of families, and I mentioned this before, I looked up apartment rentals in this area, not just Monmouth County, it doesn't matter, Old Bridge. I mean, you can hardly get a shoe, I guess, into a studio for $1,000 a month, quickly goes up to $1,500. You want to try something nice? $2,000. Before people pay rents like that in today's society, they'll be headed for these units of 7 units per acre. And while you say you couldn't help this and went to a judge, I don't know the exact, details of what happened. But can somebody on the council answer me this simple question, the mayor of the council, or legal? Is there anything that you can think of that could possibly protect us from some other outfit with a different name coming along very soon and saying, you did it for them, now do it for me? Do we have any redress by passing this for this? Does that in any way preclude somebody of different block and lot numbers, nice parcel, 20 acres or something, from putting in small apartments with children for a debacle for the present homeowners here? Can anybody comment on how we have any way of preventing that a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever? I'm entertaining comments.
Well, we appreciate your taking our comments.
I appreciate your comments for this matter.
You mean you're entertaining and you'd like some comments?
Here's what we can tell you. This is a...
Rascals on Route 35, I told you before, you're missing your calling.
Here's what we can tell you. This is a unique arrangement. It is specific to this site. If someone else owned a piece of land and wanted the municipality to provide something similar, they would have to approach the master plan subcommittee that is responsible for the continued examination of how the town is zoned. They would have to go through that particular process, who would send a request to the mayor and council to consider making a zone change, which is an extraordinary authority that the governing body has. So we have all of the inherent protections of saying no. Now, there is always the option that anyone can file litigation against anybody they want, anytime they like, to try and demand that the township do whatever it is they like. We're in ongoing litigation with at least 2 developers that I can think of right now that demand that the town do something for them that we disagree with. So the answer to your question is we have inherent protections already afforded to us under the law that give this governing body the authority to determine what the zoning ordinances will look like. And in the event that someone wishes to challenge that, which they could on this or on any other issue, we would have all of the legal resources of the municipality available to defend our position.
I thank you for your comments, and I want to simply say back to you that on all ordinances that can be challenged ad infinitum for whatever reason, this particular one certainly makes it a lot easier for somebody after it goes to the planning board and it comes to you and want you to say no. It looks to me like your chances of losing in court would be incredible. We have no protection because with this as already in existence, somebody before a judge can say, they did it for that guy, why not me? So my comment back to you is, once this is passed, the gates are open. We have no real protection.
Yeah, I want to stop you right there, Mr. Maggie, because I would respectfully disagree with you. We have inherent protections available to us under municipal land use law, under the powers this governing body maintains, and this particular issue is a function of a settlement that was presided over by the Council of Affordable Housing. And so there is a uniqueness to this that I think any intelligible jurist would examine and understand the predicament that we were in. I don't believe that there is any precedent setting here with respect to this particular ordinance.
No,
Now, I'm not an attorney,
if anything, first of all, the kind of precedent that you're talking about, usually nobody goes to court and says, well, because of this ordinance, therefore there should be another ordinance for me. It's not done that way. But beyond that, actually, this ordinance provides for more affordable housing. So presumably, there will be less demand for affordable housing because it provides for more.
There's an endless river for affordable housing for people with lower incomes that have a child or two, and they'll be glad to lie here.
But each township has to fulfill a certain obligation.
Any other comments, Mr. Magid, on this?
Have a good evening.
All right. Would anyone else like to make a comment for or against this? Mr. Wissner, come on up, sir. Good evening, Mr. Wissner.
Good evening. Carl Wissner, 376 Conover Street, Howell. Several meetings ago when this first came up, I had a list of questions that were specific about wording and holes and definitions that I thought were in this document. And notes were taken on that. And then at the next meeting, when the follow-up was to be held, I was told that there are discussions about certain things going on, which I certainly understand, and I agreed to delay any response. But before a vote's taken, I still have a huge gap in questions and wording issues in the document. There's 14 or 15 different issues. I volunteered at the first meeting to go to the town hall and talk to anybody if they wanted to and sit and go over this, which would probably take it out of this room and make it a much easier thing to do. But I have to tell you, as a citizen who's put these questions officially before you, and I think some of them are serious legal questions, I'd hate to see a vote before my questions are answered. I mean, it's a quandary for me. I'm trying to be very cooperative and patient. But I also need my questions answered that I posed.
Mr. Shansky, do you have an update, sir? I know you collected those questions.
And I'm sorry, I don't have them listed here, Mr. Wissner. I apologize.
I mean, if you need them typed up, anything you need from me, I have my notes. I can type them up. I can meet with you in town hall. But if you take a vote without answering them, I feel like, as a person who's pretty close to what's going on here, there's going to be a wide gap in what I know about what these, like, I have simple questions like, what does a buffer mean? I have questions about retaining wall, retaining ponds, how they're going to do certain. Now, I know that when the plan is put on the table before the planning board and what have you, there are going to be a chance to raise these issues as well. But this document says things like they're completely expressly excused from all DEP, wildlife requirements, et cetera, et cetera. It's right in here.
Yeah, but we don't have the right to do that, so they don't have the right to do that.
Let me, if I just...
Go ahead.
Yeah, but it's in here. You can, you say we don't have the right to do it, then why is it in here in writing?
What do you have, Mr. Pinsky?
Just one thing. Mr. Wisner's comments, I didn't just take them as comments, I took them as like really good suggestions because there are some gaps. And what we wanted to do is see if we can open this document up through the legal parameters because we are operating under a sort of a some strictures here. So no doubt there are a couple gaps. We have expressed them to the developer. I think we've opened a, you know, you have to understand that the dialogue has been really through lawyers and the mediator at COA. We've been successful in opening up a dialogue, talking about improvements that we want to see, would like to see made to it. The developer himself has expressed ideas to improve things, but at the end of the day, the legal process did not allow us to change the ordinance that we committed to in an agreement. So there's an opportunity to work on a number of these things, and I wanted desperately to have them in here. I truly did. Now, a number of the concerns you raised, Mr. Wisner, are taken care of in here as well. Not all of them, but a number of them are. You called to my attention, like the design standards.
Right.
And they will have to comply with the facade standards.
But see, it doesn't say that right now. If you pass it the way it's written now, it excuses them from it.
No.
It's been rewritten?
No.
Are you talking about the one that says the commercial portion? Is that the part you're talking about, Mr. Whistler?
Yes, it says the commercial portion of the development otherwise shall be exempt from the building design standards found in ordinance number 0632. The residential portion of development shall be exempt from the building design standards found in ordinance 0632.
Mr. Whistler, if I could just ask you to hold for 1 second.
These are very specific questions, that's my
Agreed.
point.
We need
Yeah,
I need a that's okay. I need a motion from the council just to extend beyond our time limitation of 11 p.m. Does someone make a motion to 11:30?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion, we need a second.
Can't do it.
It does say that...
Hold on 1 second, Mr. Mangiamani. We need a second to continue the meeting, otherwise we're going to have to carry this hearing and adjourn. Is there a second to extend?
I'll second to go to 11:15 if Mrs. Dalton will amend her motion.
I'll accept that friendly amendment.
Understood. So to 11:15. Okay.
I'm not going to...
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, just respond with aye. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Mangiamani.
I don't want to take up that very valuable time, but I think that the first portion of that section does address that they are not exempt from a certain of the building design standards.
They are not exempt, you said?
Yeah, it says all the above mentioned with respect to the commercial portion of the development must comply to the building design standards requirements for signage, lighting, facade, and roof treatment found in ordinance number 006-32.
Where are you reading that?
5B.
5B. It's the one sentence before the sentence that we were just referring to. Then it just says it will otherwise be except for those standards that are enumerated above it. So it's not completely exempt. It's partly not exempt.
But see, this is exactly what I'm just simply wanting to sit down with someone and say, I may not disagree with any of this if someone gives me an answer to what it means.
Let me suggest this, and part of my role...
But I don't know right now whether I agree or disagree. That's my problem.
Part of my role in chairing the meeting sometimes is to have the unpopular position of having to kind of tell it like it is at certain times and we have a long enough relationship where
Sure.
there's a mutual respect. The difficulty we have here is that we would like very much to make many more changes to this. Candidly, as not to mislead you, we can't. We literally are in a position where if we do not approve this as currently constituted, we will be in violation of our agreement, and it'll pose immeasurable complications for us.
But are your hands...
Hold on one second.
go ahead, sure.
From an affordable housing perspective.
Right.
Having said that, what I do think is appropriate is that we need a tactical plan to address how to anticipate being ready from a planning board perspective and how to anticipate dealing with this developer when this comes to fruition. And so what I would recommend, unless the council feels differently, is to have Mr. Wisner meet with you, Mr. Chernetsky, review this in detail, go over the questions and comments that he's had, so that when it comes time for the planning board application and or presentation, we have a scorecard, if you will, of the very definitive things that we want to make certain that get addressed, some of which we'll be able to do, some of which we may not. And not that I want to volunteer Councilman Howell's time, because his time is valuable, but as the council's member of the planning board, perhaps he can sit in on that meeting so that when it comes time for this application to be heard, he'll have the scorecard of all the things that we went over, so that as the council's member to the planning board, he'll have all of the issues that Mr. Wisner has raised, many of which, in fact, all of which we agree with, and that we can push this as far as we can to get these included in any potential approval. And I think that would be probably the most appropriate compromise we can offer now, knowing that if we were to try and make a change to this, we are immediately in violation of the agreement that we have pursuant to COA.
And I believe, basically, I understand that concept from the beginning. That doesn't take away my problem as a citizen to say, what does it mean to me?
Of course.
And that's what I'm asking, and I can't get
Well,
from here
I
to
think
there.
the only thing we can tell you, Mr. Wisner, is that I just don't know that we're in a position here to
All
give
right.
you the thoroughness that you deserve, quite frankly, from a technical perspective. And I think, in fairness, and I'll take the responsibility as chair, we should have gotten back to you with a more thorough description of the answers that you had asked for some while back. And we're at fault for not having done that. I think the remedy is, let's have you in, let's sit down and go over all of them in detail. Mr. Howell, do you agree to participate in that meeting?
Mayor, the only thing I would say about that is we should really find out when this developer is planning on coming to the planning board, because as you may recall, on reorg day, I voted against my appointment to the planning board, and I intend to vote against my appointment to the planning board again this year.
See, one of the only privileges as mayor is that I was finally smart enough to realize I can actually appoint someone to go in my stead. Only took me 4 years to realize that.
You're getting there.
Yeah, finally, right? Finally. So I think that's the compromise that we can offer, Mr. Wisner. And again, I'll take full accountability that we did not get you those explanations in advance, but we want to make every effort to do so as thoroughly as we can. And I'm going to ask that the manager call you tomorrow, at whatever number is convenient for you. We'll have you in, we'll go over every one of them and make sure we get all of them answered.
However, a vote will be taken tonight.
However,
on this
in
document.
the spirit of candor, we
So
do need
once
to make
again,
a
the
vote.
citizen
Truthfully?
walks away at the bottom of the landslide.
Carl, truthfully,
Yeah.
we could have sat with you 10 times, and we tried everything we could to get them to reopen this.
I'm not
And there
asking
was
it to
no-
be reopened.
but
I'm
no
asking to
matter what-
interpret what it says now.
Yeah, but no matter what,
Right.
they were not going to let us open this agreement. So
That's
we
not
could have
when-
we could have just arbitrarily changed the words.
I think Mr. Wisner's contention is he had some questions.
Yeah, I didn't ask for the
And-
word
and
to be changed.
He wanted to get an explanation on what some of these terms and conditions meant, and we were negligent in getting that back to you. And again, I'll take the responsibility as the chair of this council.
Well, I'm still
but we didn't get
available
that.
even post your vote to discuss what these definitions
Well,
are.
I think our offer to you, it's sincere. Tomorrow, you're going to get a call.
All
We're
right.
going to have you come in, and Mr. Howell will participate in that meeting. He's been kind enough to agree to do so, and we'll go through it in detail. And quite frankly, it'll be helpful for us as we prepare for what to anticipate at the planning board level.
All right.
And please accept our sincere apologies. It certainly was not done out of purposeful neglect. Thank you, Mr. Wisner. Anyone else who'd like to make any comments for or against the adoption of this particular ordinance? Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public portion. I'd ask a member of the council to please make a motion.
Motion in ordinance number 0-07-13 be finally passed and adopted, and notice of its passing and adoption be published in the 4/27/07 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
Are there any final remarks?
Yeah, I do have a question.
Right
I
answer.
just want a little clarification on something here. On page 3, it's C, home occupations as per 188-64. What is that, Mr. Bongiovanni?
It's the home office ordinance saying if you want to have a business in your house, you can, but there can be no outside display of your business. You can't have customers coming to your business. You can have fax machines, computers. You can have a business in your house, but nobody can know it.
Thank you, Mr.
Home office.
Bongiovanni.
Well,
Mayor?
I was going to say that, but he said it wasn't.
Do you have a question, Ms. Showmaker? Go right ahead.
Mr. Maggot left, so I don't want to say on public that I agree with him on some of his points on this particular ordinance. One question for Mr. Bongiovanni, if I may.
Go right ahead.
One sentence that just unravels me, Mr. Bongiovanni, is where it says, under 188-73.5A, the PMU district is being created to fulfill 4 policy goals of the township. That is the one sentence that I really have a problem with voting for this, in favor of this, because of that sentence. Because to me, for me, it was not created to fulfill policy of the township. It was created by the sole purpose of the court. So some of the things that are in here, in my view, were not for policy that the township wanted to see. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, the only thing, and I know this doesn't give you any comfort or solace in this regard, but technically speaking, the agreement that was ultimately signed said this ordinance will be adopted.
Right.
And that was the language that was agreed upon. So I have to say that it's hard for the council, which voted for the agreement, to say, I don't want to vote for the ordinance which was attached to the agreement. So
Conscious of the time, there's one other quick thing to add to this, and I think one of the reasons why that language was in there was that this ordinance needed to have some connectivity to the goals and objectives and the consistency of the master plan. And the master plan has these inherent broad provisions that says we will accommodate housing for seniors, and we will accommodate housing for an affordable section, if you will. My recollection was that we needed to have connectivity to find consistency with the master plan, and that was why that reference was made, because it created a linkage, if you will, to the master plan. Ms. Dalton, did you have a comment?
There's a couple of comments, and I wanted to address this to Mr. Magid earlier about what he perceived, even the last time he spoke and made his comments, about the inconsistency between saying that this ordinance helps senior housing, but it's also designed for families with children. And, I mean, I took that language to really mean that by allowing empty nester type housing to be built, you were freeing up other housing that wouldn't necessarily be appropriate for people who didn't have children anymore. I don't think that's really the main point. I am deeply disturbed that as an elected council person, I'm being told I don't have a choice and I must vote for this. And I really don't have a choice, and I really don't have a free vote in this, and I really want to vote against it because I wasn't on the council that created it. I wasn't part of it, but I also don't want to bring litigation and additional council fees to our citizens. I am always mindful of the costs of every vote, the consequences of it, but it disturbs me deeply that we don't have a choice here, and I don't like being handcuffed.
I understand that.
My sentiments are the same. It's not that I agreed or disagreed. It was the fashion and the manner that brought us to this point, and that we don't have a choice.
Three.
Three.
We all know this shouldn't have come about. It was forced down our throats. I did not like being in on the negotiations. I did not like the agreement. I did not agree with the agreement. Stuck between a rock and a hard place. And sometimes that happens in life. I don't agree with it either. Gave my word down in Trenton I would vote for this. If it wasn't for that statement, not a snowball's chance in hell I'd vote for this. So, what it is, and I do think we'll end up in needless litigation. And what are you gonna do? I mean, it should have never come about. I agree with a lot of Mr. Maggot said too. It opens up Pandora's box in the future. If there was a way out of it, somebody give it to me, I'll go against it.
It should be noted that COA Council, worked out this agreement, and it's their recommendation that we have a time frame that we have to abide by. And it's not something that I like telling anybody either, members of the public or the council people. But on the other hand, as to what prior administrations did, to a certain extent, you have to decide what is the principle of voting against something that legally the township has an obligation to perform.
Thank you for that comment,
All right.
Ronnie.
Are there any other comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Yes.
We went through it, yes.
We're good? All right, you know what, it's 11:20. Pleasure of the council, do you want to quickly move? These are only introductions, there's no public hearings. Do you want to move on 9A, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5?
Not 1 and 2. 1 and 2 we did. They're just, we'll move them.
I'm sorry, you are correct. They're only there for informational purposes.
I'll
All
run
right,
through.
would the
right?
council like to proceed on 3, 4, and 5?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'd ask a member of the council to proceed on 9A3. This is amending land use ordinance 079, the ARE zone.
Motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-18 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the 42707 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it be further considered for a final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on 5/15/07, 7:30 prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title?
An ordinance amending the Township of Howell's ordinance number 07-09 entitled An Ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 188 Land Use to revise the ARE zoning district to provide lot acreaging, open lands, and farmland preservation options, and to establish the ARE 4 zone as recommended by the Master Plan Reexamination Report.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, to introduce.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. 9A4, this is 00719, introduction for the sexually oriented business restriction ordinance.
Motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-19 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the 427 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and to be further considered for final passage after public hearing and meeting of the Township Council to be held on 5/15/07, 7:30 prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 188 entitled Land Use of the Code of the Township of Howell in order to define and regulate sexually oriented businesses.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton? Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. And we have 9A5, please, land use signs.
Motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-20 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the 42707 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passes on first reading by title. That'll be further considered for final passage at the public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on 5/15/07 at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
We need a second, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, for introduction.
I'm going to read the title.
I'm sorry, read the
It's
title.
okay. An ordinance amending the Township of Howell's Ordinance, Chapter 256, Section 3, entitled Signs Allowed Without Permit, and Section 7, entitled Prohibited Signs, in order to permit open house signs.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton? Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, I just want to call everyone's attention to page 13 of the agenda, our meeting schedule, which is getting heavy. We have a workshop meeting Tuesday, May 1st, executive session at 6:30, regular session, obviously, at approximately 7:30. We do have a public participation meeting on Tuesday, May the 8th. It is actually at middle school, is it south or north? I thought it was south. It is south, okay. At middle school south, we have our student government mock meeting that evening at 6:30.
But that May, Bruce Davis had requested a change for that.
Okay.
That's been the date for the Student Government Day,
For a long time.
but it is a tradition that
They
they
do it
get
here.
to sit here. However,
Yeah.
that's also the date where we have to do the hearing on the wastewater management plan.
Okay.
And so the decision was to move that into a public, a larger auditorium. So what we're trying to do is reschedule Student Government Day.
Wow.
Yeah, so they can do it.
Yeah, so we could do it here. And we'll know
Yeah,
tomorrow.
It's much better for the kids to do it here.
Yeah.
At least I think. I mean, they get to use this chamber and
Whose idea was it to do the wastewater management thing?
overnight.
That would be the governing
Deputy
body.
mayor.
Oh, well. All right, so we'll have final confirmation on where we're going to be and what's going to happen Student Government Day-wise?
Yes.
Okay. And our regular meeting is Tuesday, May the 15th. Is there any other business you have, Mr. Chinyetsky?
No, sir.
There's only one really quick thing I want to just mention to the council. Now that we're sort of up and functioning in the new year, I'd like the council just to think about us electing or anointing certain council persons to be liaisons to certain departments. So that, for example, when an ordinance comes up and it has to deal with land use, the liaison that faces off to that will automatically always be the person that leads when it comes to introducing it. Maybe it gets closer to it. If we need some explanation, maybe it's on legal and finance, and that's Mrs. Dalton's area. She can lead the dialogue when it comes to that. I'm not going to profess what I think the right areas are. Maybe we can all come back. I think it's a natural for Mr. Howell to have construction and planning and zoning, being on the planning board. I think we should take advantage of Mrs. Dalton's legal experience and perhaps legal and finance. And then we have Mrs. Showmaker, who's got all kinds of experience in the years that she's been here. So maybe public safety. They're just throwing these out as an aside, but I think it's something we should think about and maybe come back at our next workshop and let's collectively figure out what's the best way to do it. We can then continue to move through our business. You have a comment?
Sort of following up on that, if perhaps the town manager and Mr. Bongiovanni can work on that, I would also like an opinion or some sort of advice on the issue of why I always have to vote first. You laugh, and it's, but you know, sometimes I don't always want to vote first. What's the authority for requiring it to be alphabetical?
Actually,
Because I can change my last name back to White, and then I'll be last, except for the man.
my recollection actually is, and I could be wrong on this, and the one night I didn't bring my Robert's rules, I think it's at the discretion of the chair in terms of the order in which the roll is called.
And I know that in years prior, I have seen the
Absolutely.
order change.
Well, let me use whatever little executive authority I have and request, Mrs. Woolman, that we come up with a new schedule to mix this up. I don't quite know what that is, but I think from a roll call perspective, maybe we can simply alternate and.
I'll tell you, I have no problem voting yes or no, whatever I believe on the policy. If I'm the first person I have to say no, I have no problem. So if you want to call me first, call me first.
That's not, I'm not saying I have no, I have no problem standing on my own decision, but just sometimes
I
went a little
have
more
seen, Mayor, where members of a legislative body request that they be returned to for vote.
Rotate it.
Yeah,
Rotate.
Yeah, I mean, procedurally, you could say, come back to me. Do you want to do that instead?
Whatever's easiest for the clerk's office. It's fine.
I just want to vote second or fourth after Hal, okay? For personal reasons.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion carried, meeting adjourned. Same